attempt to involve the neutral presiding officer as part of the debate. Such conduct undermines this House, the goal of impartial, analytic consistency in presiding that is required of a member serving as chair. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Finstead, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to recognize my friend and fellow Minnesota farmer, Lori Stevemer, who recently completed a successful term as president of the National Pork Producers Council. Lori has dedicated her career to advocating for Minnesota's pork producers. In addition to raising pigs with her husband Dale on their farm near Easton, Minnesota, Lori served 9 years on the executive board of the Minnesota Pork Producers Association, including 2 years as president, and on various state and national committees. The time and effort she invests on behalf of not only Minnesota pork producers, but all American pork producers has helped shape a better business climate, expand American producers' market access, and promote the benefits of pork to a wide audience. Lori often says, the world is run by the people who show up, and show up she does. Lori has made countless trips to Washington, as well as all across the country and internationally, to advocate for her fellow pork producers. Lori, thank you for your years of relentless dedication and leadership, and congratulations on a successful year as president of the National Pork Producers Council. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Subramaniam, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to congratulate the winners of this year's Congressional Award medalists from Virginia's 10th District. These young men and women put 400+ hours of volunteer work and 200+ hours to personal development, as well as 200+ hours to personal fitness activities. The winners of the Congressional Gold Medal this year are Sabrina Liu of Riverside High School, who designed handmade cars and spread cancer awareness, Jason Jayanth of Academies of Loudon and John Champ High School, who tutored students and volunteered at animal shelters while also playing on the basketball team, and Caitlin Murphy, a sophomore at James Robinson Secondary School, who swam, played violin, and created and delivered more than 800 cards for seniors in local retirement homes. So congratulations to these very accomplished young individuals on your Congressional Gold Medals, and thank you for your service. Mr. Speaker, I also rise today to recognize the Gainesville High School baseball team's historic state championship victory. In just their 4th season, so they've only been in high school for 4 years, the Cardinals won their first state title, capping off the season with a 23-5 record. And the championship game itself came down to the wire with 2 outs and a tying run in the scoring position. The Cardinals recorded the final out and sealed the win. So congratulations to Gainesville High School on your historic championship winning season, and to all the hard work and hustle along the way. Congratulations. Also, Mr. Speaker, one of the things I get asked is, why can't the federal government be as fast and cost efficient as the private sector? And take a pen like this. If you're trying to buy a lot of them and you're in the private sector, you can just go to Staples and Amazon and just purchase it right there really quickly and for a pretty good cost. But in the public sector, there's a lot of rules and regulations in place to buy things like pens or Staples. And it's even harder to do this with technology tools that can help people get their Social Security payments faster, or renew passports, or help people access Medicare and Medicaid. And so that's why I'm introducing the bipartisan FIT Procurement Act today with my colleague, Congressman Burleson. The FIT Procurement Act would raise cost caps and allow the federal government to buy more innovative tools without going through the needless bureaucracy. And so what we're trying to do basically is help agencies not have to jump through so many hoops to get innovative tools to help people and help them serve people. And it'll make it easier as well for small businesses to sell to the federal government. And our bill makes common sense fixes that we can all support on both sides of the aisle. So I look forward to working with my colleagues to pass this bill that will save American taxpayers money, support small businesses, and spur economic innovation. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the Loudoun Wildlife Conservancy as it celebrates 30 years of service to our community. An organization initially founded by 3 individuals has grown to now over 600 volunteers, and the Conservancy has led the charge on habitat conservation, environmental education, and advocacy in Loudoun County, everything from stream monitoring to bird and animal counting. And the Loudoun County Wildlife Conservancy reminds us that conservation isn't just about nature, it's about community, resilience, and quality of life. And I know my wife and I are big fans of them and big supporters. So congratulations to Loudoun County Wildlife Conservancy on all your years to service to the community. And thank you to all the volunteers. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Tiffany, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to congratulate the high school athletes from Wisconsin's 7th District who competed in the state championships during the 2025 spring sports season. During the individual state boys golf tournament, Drake Card of Hudson and Tucker Johnson of Neelsville took home the Division I and Division III state titles respectively. For girls track and field, Macy Heisey, Sierra Hartman, Aletta Udine, Kelly Fern, and Izzy Sonnentag took home the title in their individual events, while the Cameron and Bloomer girls relay teams won first place in their respective relays. On the same day, the Marathon High School boys track team took first overall, going against 50 teams. Additionally, boys track and field athletes Samuel Hebert, Lucas Hansen, Gage Mika, Brady Thompson, Taylor Karch, Ashton Clark, Kyle Schreiner, and Chris Marcel won the title in their individual events, while the Marathon boys relay team took home first place in the 4x400 relay. Congratulations to each of these state champions and their coaches. Keep up the hard work and enjoy your summer. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. DeSaulnier, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nice pronunciation. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of our nation's investments in biomedical research through the National Institutes for Health and the American National Cancer Institute. The research that is conducted through NIH and NCI improves health outcomes, creates jobs, and furthers our global leadership in biomedical research and innovation. I'm proud to have been a consistent supporter of funding for these institutions and having visited both institutions in Bethesda and around this country. NIH is the largest public funding source of biomedical research worldwide, with a current budget of $47.7 billion. Similarly, NCI is the largest public funder of cancer research in the world, with a current budget of $7.22 billion. NCI was created by a Republican president, Richard Nixon, as his war on cancer, which has been phenomenally successful. NIH funding attracts top talent from across the country and indeed the globe to help make our biomedical research industry the best by far in the world, an accomplishment Americans should be incredibly proud of. As a survivor of chronic lymphocytic leukemia, stage 4, the work that goes on at the National Cancer Institute is of personal importance to myself and approximately 20 million American cancer survivors. We are alive today because of innovations in medicine funded by taxpayers and the private sector in a wonderful public-private partnership. Research funded through NCI has undoubtedly helped improve health outcomes. A study published by the American Cancer Society notes that the cancer mortality rate has declined 33% since 1991. 33%. Those are all Americans who are living today like myself. When I was diagnosed, my oncologist said, "You're lucky." 10 years ago, the same diagnosis, I would have had to say, all we could do is tell you to enjoy whatever time you have left. Now, because of these investments, I'm able to live a full life expectancy like many of the other survivors. From developing the first chemotherapy drug to beat metastatic cancer in 1956 to promising new research in immunotherapy, NCI-funded research has developed numerous new drugs, therapies for cancer. While these investments in research are good for health outcomes, they are also good for our economy, tremendously good for our economy. In fiscal year 2023, NIH funding generated approximately $92.9 billion in economic activity. That's a great return on investment, Mr. Speaker. NIH awards over 80% of its annual budget in the form of research grants to 2,500 research institutions across the country in red states and blue. These grants support the jobs of more than 300,000 researchers at institutions in all 50 states and provide immeasurable benefits to our local communities, especially the local community economies. I'm proud that in the area I represent, in the San Francisco Bay Area, Northern California, home of 2 of the top 10 recipients of NIH grants, the University of California in San Francisco and Stanford University. UCSF is the top public university recipient of NIH grants, making the region a leader in biomedical research and the benefits to the economy and to individuals like myself. The economic benefits are further compounded by private investment. In 2020, private industry as a whole invested $161.8 billion in biomedical research in the U.S. This was allowed because of the basic research done at NIH and NCI. Despite these numerous benefits, the current administration and many of my Republican colleagues are proposing to cut the NIH's budget by 40% and NCI's budget by 37%. That would be a grave mistake for individual Americans who will die, their families, and for our economy. While some claim that private industry alone can replace federal investment in biomedical research, this just isn't the case. It's been proven over decades. And the private sector needs this public sector investment for them to do the drugs, many of the drugs and the treatments that we currently have. This has been the case for decades. While some claim that this is easily done, there's no way. Mr. Chairman, I yield back with the reminder that the Chinese are investing billions of dollars to catch up to us in this field. We should not lose American leadership. Thanks so much.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Muser, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, the American economy is gaining momentum, but the independent Federal Reserve is regrettably not adding the energy needed to abet this growth potential. After 4 years of inflation caused by excessive government spending and an all-out assault on U.S. energy, our private sector economy is now in significant recovery, and it truly is only the beginning. Tariffs are realigning supply chains here at home, and by supply meeting and exceeding demand, this will continue to lower inflation. Additionally, the OBBB makes bonus depreciation, the small business deduction, the R&D tax credits permanent, sharpening our competitive edge and incentivizing capital investment. The table is set for growth. However, nearly $1 trillion in annual interest payments hang over our heads. Here's where the Fed's actions can make an enormous difference. Due to Biden administration's highly inflationary policies, we saw inflation soar to over 9%, 20% over the 4-year period. Those policies and inflationary rates that came from them forced the higher interest rates by the Fed to as high as 5.5%. The recent CPI report, however, has inflation at 2.4%. And PCE, the Fed's favorite indicator, personal consumption expenditures, at only 2.1%. Yet the Fed has not moved much and has left interest rates as high as at where they currently are at 4.5%. So, Mr. Speaker, a 1% reduction of interest rates to 3.5% would add $290 billion in GDP growth while also delivering $200 billion of savings in the service we pay on our debt. That's an improvement of $490 billion to boost our economy. Lower rates today will advance housing, an industry with a 3-to-1 multiplier, spur capital investment, and unlock durable good purchases, including cars and household appliances. Unfortunately, fear-mongering by the media drove consumer sentiment down despite the, in fact, lower inflationary data. So, Mr. Speaker, I call upon the Fed to choose growth over apprehension, as the President is urging. Mr. Speaker, arise today as we are voting on fiscal 26, FY26, the MilCon VA Military Construction, Veterans Affairs, and Related Agencies Appropriations Act, an essential bill that demonstrates our unwavering commitment to our veterans, military families, and national security. This is a major piece of legislation totaling $453 billion that ensures we support those who've worn the uniform and continue building the strongest military in the world. This bill fully funds veterans' medical care, backing up the words we often say on this floor and throughout our districts that we support our veterans and we thank them for their service. Let me quickly walk through what's in this bill. $453 billion in total funding, $150 billion in discretionary funding, $300 billion for mandatory programs, $131 billion to fully fund veterans' medical care, $2 billion for military family housing, and over $1.2 billion for Guard and Reserve construction facilities. This supports President Trump's initiative to end veteran homelessness through the Bridging Rental Assistance for Veteran Empowerment Program, protects veterans' Second Amendment rights, and invests heavily in general military construction. I represent proudly more than 45,000 veterans in Pennsylvania's 9th Congressional District. When you include their families, many of whom have served or are preparing to serve, well over 100,000 Pennsylvanians just in my district alone will be directly impacted by what we do today. We also have 800,000 veterans throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. As well, our Lebanon VA, in my district, was ranked among the top VAs in the nation for many years in a row. That is something we certainly take pride in and something this bill supports. I'm also proud to represent Fort Indiantown Gap, the second largest Army helicopter training facility in the U.S. In total, the Gap trains more than 130,000 military personnel each year. This bill not only honors our past military heroes, it also helps inspire the next generation to serve, as we are seeing that patriotism grow and recruitment is way up. Thanks in part to the new culture of strength and support for our military under President Trump's leadership. So I urge my colleagues to vote yes on this critical appropriations bill. It reflects our values, strengthens our defense, and ensures we never waver in our duty to those who sacrificed for our freedom. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from New Hampshire, Ms. Goodlander, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to honor America's firefighters and first responders, American heroes who put their lives on the line every single day to keep our communities safe, heroes who give their lives to saving lives. Firefighters run into fire for us. They're on the front lines of fighting our nation's opioid epidemic. And in their service to all of us, firefighters are exposed to toxic chemicals, cancer-causing chemicals, every single day. That's why cancer is the leading cause of death for America's firefighters. They do all this work for us knowing the hazards of the important job that they do, and that's what makes them the best of America. Heroes who deserve our support, heroes with families and loved ones who deserve our support. But today, the families of fallen American heroes who died from cancers they developed in their service to all of us aren't getting the federal benefits they have earned because of a gap in existing law. Let me repeat that. American heroes who have died from cancer in their service to our country aren't getting the benefits that they have earned because of gaps in federal law, fixable gaps in federal law. That's not right, and Congress can do something about this. I'm here today because we must close this gap for New Hampshire heroes who are standing beside me today, who are with us today in this chamber. A New Hampshire hero, Lieutenant Jessica Wyman of Nashua Fire Rescue, Lieutenant Aaron Cooper of Keens Fire Department, both of whom lost their lives to lung cancer that they developed in the line of duty. These two brave heroes gave their lives to keep our communities safe. Their families and loved ones deserve to get the benefits that they have earned. And that is why today, Mr. Speaker, I am calling on members of Congress from across America to support bipartisan, bicameral legislation, the Honoring Our Fallen Heroes Act, H.R. 1269. This is common sense, long overdue legislation that I'm proud to co-sponsor because it will deliver for our first responders and their families. I want to say today that I am forever grateful to Lieutenant Chris Wyman, a hero in his own right who's here with us in this chamber today. He has come to Congress to do what we all should hope every American will do, to advocate for legislation, for this legislation that we have got to get done. In this chamber, there are words behind me, words of New Hampshire's own Daniel Webster, who called on us to do something worthy to be remembered. These heroes, this hero standing before us today, has done so much that is worthy to be remembered and worthy to be honored. But Lieutenant Jessica Wyman, as eloquent as Daniel Webster is, I want to say that Lieutenant Jessica Wyman lived by a motto that's even more powerful to me, that resonates even more deeply to me. She lived by the motto, tell me and I forget, show me and I remember, involve me and I understand. Lieutenant Wyman, thank you from the bottom of my heart for involving me in this cause. It's a cause that I'm going to fight for because it's a cause that we should all be on board with. It is honoring American heroes who are the best of our country. By making the Honoring Our Fallen Heroes Act law, the United States Congress would be doing something worthy to be remembered, and I want to get all of you involved. So with that, I want to say, let's get this done. This Congress, it's long overdue. Thank you, Lieutenant Wyman. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Chairman Thompson, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to recognize June as Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month, a time to bring attention to a disease that impacts nearly every family in America in some way. This month serves as a solemn reminder of the devastating toll Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia continue to take on our loved ones, our caregivers, and our communities. More than 6 million Americans are living with Alzheimer's today. Around the world, nearly 50 million people are facing daily struggle of this disease or related dementias. Alzheimer's is not just a health issue, it's a national crisis. It is the sixth leading cause of death in the United States and remains the only one in the top 10 with no known cure. No way to prevent it and no effective means to slow its progression. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Alzheimer's-related deaths increased by 16%, further underscoring the urgency for action. Behind these statistics are real people. I recently had the privilege of meeting with two advocates from my district, Maria Frank of Wellsboro and Julianne Steinbacher of Williamsport. They came to Washington on behalf of the Alzheimer's Association to share their personal experiences and to urge continued investment in research and support for patients and caregivers. However, the Alzheimer's Association does more than just advocate for Alzheimer's and dementia patients and their families. Through its strong network of nationwide chapters, the association invests directly in cutting-edge research, offering free 24/7 care consultation for patients and their families, and hosts community education programs and caregiver support groups, ensuring families and patients receive the critical resources that they need. Their stories are a powerful reminder behind every diagnosis is a family doing everything they can to hold on to the moment, to dignity, and to hope. This is personal for so many of us. A diagnosis of Alzheimer's doesn't impact one individual, it affects the entire families. But there is hope. We've seen progress through bipartisan investment in research. Continued support for groundbreaking innovation can bring us closer to treatment and one day, a cure. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank Maria and Julianne for their tireless advocacy and commitment to this cause. This month, let's support the families impacted and stop believing and never stop believing in a future where Alzheimer's is no longer a devastating diagnosis, but a defeated disease. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Min, for 5 minutes.
Speaker, thank you for pronouncing my last name correctly. I ask for unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks and to include extraneous material in the record.
The gentleman is recognized without objection.
I rise today in opposition to House Resolution 516, sponsored by Representative Young Kim. This resolution has a lot of things I think we all can agree upon, including recognizing the right to assemble and protest peaceably and condemning violence against law enforcement. But in the very last clause, it specifically expresses gratitude to law enforcement, including ICE, for, quote, keeping our communities safe in the face of danger. And I want to be clear, I commend local law enforcement, including the Orange County Sheriff's Department, which I represent, for their professionalism and courage. It's a tough job, and I'm so grateful to the men and women who go out there every day and risk their lives to keep our communities safe. But to extend these thanks to ICE, while failing to acknowledge the myriad of ways in which ICE is making our communities more dangerous, is outrageous and dishonest. I hear every single day, and I know Young Kim does too because we represent neighboring districts in Orange County, I hear from constituents who are deeply concerned about ICE's lawbreaking. We've seen the videos. We've heard the eyewitness accounts. ICE agents are kidnapping people in broad daylight. They are assaulting people in broad daylight. They're doing so while masked up, refusing to identify themselves, while wearing civilian clothes like jeans and sneakers. They come out of unmarked vans, they tackle people, they assault people, and frankly, other than the ICE vests or jackets they're wearing, which, by the way, you can now buy for $29.99 on Amazon, they look more like gang members than federal law enforcement agents. And if you run away from these mass vigilantes, they will chase you down and beat you down. If you ask to see their identification or their warrant, they will assault you and arrest you. If you film them, they will pull a gun on you. These tactics are grossly illegal and not tactics that local law enforcement agencies engage in. Our local law enforcement follows the law. They wear body cameras. They're subject to disciplinary actions if they violate due process rights. But ICE, they're completely unaccountable and totally out of control. We've seen them assault citizens. We've seen them assault elected officials, including members of Congress, including my colleague from California, Senator Alex Padilla, who just 2 weeks ago was assaulted, tackled, handcuffed, and shoved to the ground for asking a question at a press conference. And the idea that ICE is making our communities safer is ludicrous. I want to quote the podcaster Joe Rogan. If the Trump administration, if they're running and they say we're going to arrest all the people at Home Depot, we're going to go to construction sites, and we're going to just like tackle people at construction sites, I don't think anyone would have signed up for that. They said we're going to get rid of the criminals and the gang members first, right? And now we're seeing like Home Depots get raided. It's crazy. And it is crazy because the reality of the situation is that ICE is not going after violent criminals. They're going after peaceful, law-abiding immigrants. As the right-wing Cato Institute recently found, 93% of the people being apprehended by ICE have had no convictions for violent crime. ICE is not going after MS-13 or murderers or rapists. They're going after innocent people, including a woman in Tennessee who was 5 months pregnant and engaged to a U.S. citizen. Iris Diana Monteroso Lanes was transferred to a detention center in Louisiana, forced to sleep on the floor and eat food infested with roaches. She was denied medical care despite complaining repeatedly about sharp pains in her pelvis. And she lost her baby because of this mistreatment. She was not a criminal. She was an expectant mom whose child died. And it's clear that ICE's lawless actions are making our communities much more dangerous. Here's a statement issued by the mayor of Santa Ana, which has been the epicenter of ICE raids in Orange County. Quote, the federal immigration raids in Santa Ana have created a climate of fear, anxiety, and instability across our community. The aggressive tactics used by federal agents have shattered trust in law enforcement and are eroding the critical relationship between our residents and the Santa Ana Police Department. When families are too afraid to report crimes or engage with local authorities, we are all less safe, end quote. ICE's lawless sweeps have also deeply impacted the Korean community in SoCal. The first ICE raids targeted Korean-owned garment factories and have caused significant confusion, fear, and terror in the Korean American community. I hear every day from Korean Americans who are terrified about ICE, and I know that my colleagues, including Young Kim, do too. They know that ICE is making our communities less safe. And I want to close with this. We've all seen the videos and the images of Narciso Barranco, a gardener and father of 3 U.S. Marines who was tackled and punched repeatedly in the head by ICE agents wearing jeans and sneakers. As one of his sons, Alejandro, a former current Marine, stated that if he had treated a detainee while deployed as a Marine the same way ICE agents treated his father, it would be clearly a war crime. Well, Narciso Barranco is a resident of Tustin. He is a constituent of young Kim. And I would guess that he would vehemently disagree with the claim that ICE is making our communities safer. How can anyone express gratitude to ICE when they are literally committing war crimes against their constituents? This resolution is shameful, it is morally wrong. Thanking ICE is the worst kind of political stunt at this point in time when our constituents, when our communities are living in fear and terror. I yield back. And with that, I also ask unanimous consent to introduce 4 items into the record. First is ICE immigration jacket becomes bestseller on Amazon. The second is a Cato Institute blog entry. 65% of people taken by ICE had no convictions, 93% no violent convictions. The third is a statement from Santa Ana Mayor Valerie Mezcua. And the fourth is a statement from the Korean American Federation of Los Angeles in response to the ICE raids on June 6th.
Without objection.
Thank you. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Kansas, Mr. Mann, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, thanks to the leadership of President Trump, America and the world are safer today than we were a week ago. Iran, the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism, is no longer on the verge of obtaining a nuclear weapon, and now they have agreed to a ceasefire with Israel. President Trump is fulfilling his campaign promise to make America safe again. Promises made, promises kept. Americans want peace through strength, and that is what President Trump is committed to. For far too long, administrations in Washington, D.C. have created red lines that were crossed without consequence, agreed to deals with Iran that the regime disregarded, and concerned themselves more with the appeasement than with protecting American interests. President Trump took a different approach. For months, President Trump has urged Iran to make a deal. He has been clear. There's no world where Iran, whose leadership chants death to Israel, death to America, will be allowed to obtain a nuclear weapon, ever. This is not up for debate. President Trump is restoring America's leadership on the world stage and fighting tirelessly to keep Americans safe both home and abroad. This past week, President Trump showed that he is not willing to let America be strung along or taken advantage of. After Iran refused to accept a deal and continued to wreak havoc in the region through its proxy organizations, President Trump carried out targeted, strategic strikes to prevent the pending threat of Iran's nuclear enrichment program. He was also clear. Attacks on U.S. forces will not be tolerated, and there will be grave consequences for such action. This is what leadership looks like, and I applaud President Trump for putting America first. Audra and I are grateful that our brave servicemen and women were not harmed in the strikes, and I continue to pray for the safety of our troops and Americans in the region. The world is safer today because of President Trump, and we pray that the Lord will continue to give him wisdom and discernment as he leads our nation and continues to work on bringing down tensions in the Middle East. God bless President Trump, God bless our troops, and God bless our great country. Mr. Speaker, I'm proud of the work our Republican majorities are putting in to deliver America's families the largest tax cut in American history. This process hasn't been easy by any means, but it is worth every single debate we are having to get it over the finish line. If we fail to get this bill passed and sent to President Trump's desk, middle and working class families will be the ones who pay the price. Some of my Democrat colleagues continue to lie about what our bill does. Mr. Speaker, the truth is that the One Big Beautiful Bill Act eliminates taxes and tips on overtime pay. It lowers taxes on Social Security benefits and expands the child tax credit for working class families. Our bill helps keep Americans' family farms afloat by eliminating the death tax for most, saving 2 million family farms. The family farmers and ranchers in my district are hardworking men and women who are up and moving by sunrise and working well past sundown, ensuring they can feed, clothe, and fuel the world. Their pride doesn't come from large bank accounts. It comes from answering a call that requires hard labor and lots of sacrifices to feed their neighbors. It isn't glamorous, but it's essential. And they need common sense policies like the ones in the One Big Beautiful Bill to ensure their businesses can stay afloat and that their families won't lose their inheritance because Uncle Sam is trying to bankrupt them. If Congress fails to get this bill across the finish line, the average Kansas family will see a tax hike of $2,200 this January. I understand for some that may not seem like a lot of money, but for the men and women across the big first district, $2,200 makes a big difference. It's no secret to anyone that serves in this chamber that over the last few years, the country navigated record levels of inflation brought on by excessive federal government spending. As input and everyday costs skyrocketed across the country, working and middle-class families were the ones who bore the brunt. They are long overdue for some relief, and the One Big Beautiful Bill gives them the relief that they so desperately need. In a few short weeks,
access to emergency care and abortion care to all Americans. That's why House Democrats have introduced bills to guarantee abortion rights across the country and protect access to birth control, IVF, and other fertility care. Because at the heart of this fight is something bigger than politics. It's about freedom. The freedom to control our own bodies, the freedom to decide when, if, and how we grow our families, the freedom to choose our own futures on our own terms. We are the best people to make those decisions for ourselves. Mr. Speaker, there are a lot of brilliant minds here in this legislative chamber and in state houses and in courts all across the country, but women do not need them to be in our most intimate decision-making rooms and moments. As a representative of Ohio's 13th Congressional District, I will keep standing up for our freedom. I will keep working to ensure our laws reflect our values, and we must trust women. We must protect our rights, and we must never forget that democracy only works. It only works if we honor the will of the people. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back. Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House in recess until noon today.
to legislate on this issue in certain areas. There are many policies within our purview. For instance, federal taxpayer dollars still flow to Planned Parenthood uninterrupted. According to the Charlotte Lozier Institute, between 2019 and 2024, Planned Parenthood was issued $66 million of direct funding through Title II.
And normalization of violent rhetoric and political violence have gone way too far. And we as elected representatives have to take the lead and be the first to speak out and to start to model a better and normalization of violent rhetoric and political violence have gone way too far. And we as elected representatives have to take the lead and be the first to speak out and to start to model a better path forward. Look, we can argue about who's to blame and which side is worse, but let's make this the moment where we unequivocally condemn and commit to ending violent rhetoric. Full stop. We have to make this horrific act of targeted political violence a watershed moment for our country. We have to take a hard look at where we are, and we have to remember who is watching us. Our children, the next generation of leaders, are looking to us to learn how to behave and how to treat each other. That includes creating a world where people aren't scared by the hatred and division they see in their lives every day. Creating a world where our children have kind, compassionate leaders to look up to and aspire to be. Do we really want our children to live in a world where our elected leaders bully and lead with hatred and cruelty? And remember, political violence isn't just an attack on legislators. It's an attack on the American people. It's an attack on our democracy. Political violence threatens your right to be represented, your right to have your voices heard. And it threatens who will be willing to run for office. As someone who was a doctor for almost 2 decades before I got into politics, I'm passionate about recruiting people from different backgrounds to run because we need more diversity in who represents us. Our democracy depends on good people running for office, and I'm deeply concerned that this will have a chilling effect if we don't stop it in its tracks. So as we prepare to vote on this resolution, I come to my colleagues with a solemn plea. Devastated by the loss of my friend and colleague, but more determined than ever with a deep love for the unrealized promise of our country, I implore my colleagues to not only vote in support of this resolution, but to commit together to live by these words every day, to stand up and speak out and safeguard our democracy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from California reserves. Gentleman from Kentucky is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the Majority Leader, the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Scalise.
The Majority Leader is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank my friend from Kentucky for yielding. Mr. Speaker, a little over a week ago, America witnessed a horrific act of political violence that goes against everything the United States stands for. On June 14th, a deranged murderer disguised himself as a police officer to gain entry into the home of Minnesota State Senator John Hoffman. He shot the senator and his wife, Yvette, a combined total of 17 times, as Yvette shielded her daughter, Hope, who then called 911. Thankfully, Yvette Hoffman has been released from the hospital, while John remains in serious but stable condition, and he remains in our prayers. The killer, still disguised as a law enforcement officer, then stopped at the homes of 2 other Minnesota lawmakers, one whom was fortunately not home, and the other who was perhaps saved by a timely law enforcement intervention. He later arrived at the home of Minnesota State House Speaker Emerita Melissa Hortman and assassinated her and her husband, Mark Hortman. Law enforcement then led a 2-day manhunt before capturing the killer and finding a list of more than 45 lawmakers and potential targets. As someone who's experienced political violence firsthand, this brings back a lot of emotions. The man who shot me on the ball field that day also had a list of lawmakers. I'm grateful for the actions of the brave law enforcement officers who ran towards the danger and saved lives on the ball field that day and saved, no doubt, many lives in Minnesota on that day just a few days ago. This was a methodically planned attack on the people's right to be governed by their duly elected representatives and should be universally condemned, Mr. Speaker. America's differences must be resolved through debate and democracy, not through violence. The resolution we're voting on today denounces these disturbing
and anti-American attacks and mourns the tragic loss of Melissa and Mark Hortman. HRES 519 by Ms. Morrison of Minnesota unequivocally condemns the horrific attacks on Minnesota lawmakers and their families in Brooklyn Park and Champlin, Minnesota, and calls for the rejection of political violence in Minnesota and throughout the United States. Political violence will never have a place in America. Lawmakers from both sides of the aisle must unite to reject political violence in all forms across the country. Melissa Hortman was a dedicated public servant, and we join Minnesota and the nation in honoring her life and the life of her husband, Mark. We also pray for the speedy recovery of John and Yvette Hoffman, and for peace and unity in the face of tragedy and division. With that, I urge adoption, Mr. Speaker, and yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Kentucky reserves. Gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Illinois, Congressman Krishnamurthy.
Gentleman from Illinois is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today with a heavy heart and growing concern for the safety of our democracy. On June 14th in Minnesota, Speaker Emeritus Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark were gunned down in their home. That same night, State Senator John Huffman and his wife Yvette were shot and wounded in a separate attack. These were not random acts of violence. The shooter left notes with the names of other public officials, including my own name. The Minnesota murders were a warning, and if we are to respond meaningfully, we must confront 3 hard truths. First, political violence is no longer an abstract threat. It is real, it is here, and it is escalating. Public servants across this country face rising threats simply for doing their jobs. 2, these attacks are about more than individuals. They're destabilizing our institutions. The only offense these Minnesota public officials committed, or that leader Scalise were committing, were serving their communities. When acts of violence are aimed at silencing civic participation, our entire democracy is at risk. Third, we must meet this moment with unity and resolve. We must reject the violent rhetoric and conspiracies that fuel this hatred. We must defend civil dialogue, and we must stand together as Republicans and Democrats to condemn political violence, and for that matter, violence of all kinds. Just as an aside, I hope that the American people have a chance to watch this particular debate because I think that it really illustrates the unity and resolve that I think all of us must exhibit at all times. Representative Hortman and Senator Huffman deserve more than our thoughts. They deserve our commitment to ensuring that this never happens again. Thank you, and I yield back.
Yields back. Gentleman from California reserves. The gentleman from Kentucky is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to the gentlelady from Minnesota, Ms. Fishback.
Gentlelady from Minnesota is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Mr. Comer, for yielding me the time. I rise in support of House Resolution 519. The events of June 14th were truly horrifying. Those events shocked Minnesota and they shocked the country, and we mourn the loss of Minnesota Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband, Mark. And we pray for the swift recovery of my friend, Senator John Hoffman, and his wife, Yvette. I was honored to serve with both of them in the Minnesota legislature. But we're still processing this senseless act. And I stand with my colleagues today as we say there is no place for politically motivated violence in this country. These victims committed themselves to public service and believed they were working to make their state a better place. There is no scenario in which that dedication to public service should have cost them their lives. To John and Yvette, we stand with you and your family as you continue to recover from the horrible attack. And to friends and family of Mark and Melissa, I know you are proud of the legacy they left. And they have left a strong legacy for all of us. And I hope you know the Minnesota community is here for you. And finally, I want to thank the men and women of law enforcement who worked tirelessly, worked to apprehend this deranged killer and bring the episode to a close. With that, I yield back, Mr.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Kentucky reserves. Gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 2 minutes to the gentlewoman from Minnesota, Congresswoman McCollum.
Gentlelady from Minnesota is recognized for 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in full support of this resolution, and I thank Congresswoman Morrison on behalf of the entire Minnesota delegation for bringing us together. We must stand united to condemn the assassination of Minnesota Speaker Emerita Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark, and the attempted murder of Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette. Political violence targeted these two great servants who exemplified the best of Minnesota values: hard work, respect, inclusion, and yes, caring for our neighbors. Minnesotans are devastated by these heinous acts, and we have our communities feeling shock, grief, and even feeling distraught. And we know that this whole nation has joined in mourning with us. But this wasn't just an attack on our dedicated public servants and their families. It was an attack on our system of government, democracy. Democracy embraces the civil exchange of ideas and the open debate of policy. It is a commitment to disagree with one another while respecting the rule of law. That's how democracy thrives. Violent rhetoric, threats, and physical attacks driven by political ideology must not be tolerated by any of us if our democracy is to survive. This resolution is an opportunity for us to speak with one voice, to condemn the attacks on Minnesota's elected officials. All Americans, and especially our leaders, must unequivocally denounce acts of political violence. So I urge every member of this House to stand with Minnesotans, to stand with our nation, to stand with our democracy by voting for this resolution. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from California reserves. Gentleman from Kentucky is recognized.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Finstead.
Gentleman from Minnesota is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Chairman Comer, for yielding. I rise today in support of House Resolution 519. In the early morning hours of June 14th, many of us woke up to the horrifying news of a targeted political attack that took the lives of former Minnesota Speaker of the House, Melissa Hortman, and her husband, Mark, and which left State Senator John Hoffman and his wife, Yvette, hospitalized with multiple gunshot wounds. In the hours and the days following, the largest manhunt in our state's history ensued, with over 200 officers from local, state, and federal jurisdictions working together around the clock to bring the shooter to justice. I want to thank the officers who conducted this successful manhunt and ensured the safety and security of Minnesota lawmakers in the ensuing hours. I also want to express my personal gratitude to members of the New Ulm Police Department and the Brown County Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Jason Seidel, who worked to ensure the safety of my family and I in the hours following the attack. I had the honor of serving with Speaker Emerita Hortman for 4 years during my time in the Minnesota legislature. I will forever cherish the conversations and friendship that I had with her then and throughout the 20 years since. When I look back at my time serving alongside her, Melissa embodied the spirit of the hardworking people of Minnesota. She came from a blue-collar upbringing and had a work ethic that drove her to always seek out solutions, rather than seeking out a spotlight for a political win. Melissa was a principled public servant who led by example. When tough decisions had to be made, she put her politics aside and she got the job done for Minnesotans. As a lawmaker, Melissa brought her roll-up-the-sleeves, problem-solving approach to almost every issue. And along with it, she touched all of us with the witty humor that many of us will remember her for, including myself. She was a very special person, and I can say without hesitation that our state was better served due to her leadership, and the halls of the Minnesota State Capitol will be a lot less bright without her. Words cannot express the emotions all of us across Minnesota have experienced in the wake of this tragic event. Devastation, fear, grief, outrage. Whether we disagree on policy issues, politically targeted violence like this must never be tolerated. My wife Jackie and I teach our kids that it's possible to respectfully disagree with others. We have to do that same as a society. We have to lead by example and put civility back in today's political discourse. Political disagreement is healthy. It's what our system of government was founded upon, and we have our fair share of that political disagreement in Minnesota, and we even have it here in the House chamber. I was proud to join every member of the Minnesota delegation on both sides of the aisle to call out this act of hatred, and we will continue to do so together.
The gentleman is recognized for an additional minute.
Thank you. Over the past week, I've been reminding myself that hope, faith, and resiliency is the enemy of evil. So to my fellow Minnesotans, not just the Republicans, not just the Democrats, but to my fellow Minnesotans, hope, faith, and resiliency is the enemy of evil. While one person's evil acts shook us to our core, it's up to each and every one of us to be the good. I hope that all of us take time to lean on each other, find opportunities to be more loving family members, a kinder friend, a better neighbor, because that is the good that overcomes evil. My thoughts and prayers go out to the Hortman and Hoffman families during this time of tragedy. I urge my colleagues to support this important resolution, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Kentucky reserves. Gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 3 minutes to the gentlewoman from Minnesota, Congresswoman Craig.
Gentlelady is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to honor two incredible Minnesotans and friends who were taken from us too soon. Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband, Mark Hortman. We lost Melissa and Mark 2 weekends ago in an unthinkable politically motivated attack that also threatened the lives of State Senator John Hoffman, his wife Yvette, and their daughter Hope. Like many Minnesotans, I've struggled to come to terms with this tragedy, to make sense of it. But I found comfort in community and in sharing stories of my friends, Melissa and Mark. So today, I'd like to remember the Hortmans for the people that they were and the legacy that they will leave behind. Anyone who knew Melissa and Mark knew that together, they were a force for good. Melissa was a dedicated public servant, and both she and her husband devoted their lives to improving the lives of Minnesotans. Personally, Melissa and I shared a love of golden retrievers. We often exchanged stories and photos of our beloveds. She adored her golden retriever, Gilbert, and he adored her. Professionally, I had the privilege of working with Melissa over the years and watching her excel as Speaker of the Minnesota House. I'd always admired her work and her ability to work across the aisle, make tough decisions when she needed to. She was a true leader, and she led by example. Recently, Melissa had to take a vote, a tough vote that she personally didn't agree with, but it was the best deal she could get. In my last conversation with her, I told her that I was proud of her leadership. Standing here today, I'm so glad that I did. It's still difficult to comprehend the violent attacks on the Hortmans and Hoffmans, but what I do know is that we got here in part because of our divisive rhetoric that we have allowed to seep into our politics and into our communities. It will take our entire community coming together. We must hold ourselves and each other accountable. It's the only way forward, and it's how we honor the legacy of Melissa and Mark. Thank you, and I yield the balance of my time.
Gentleman from California reserves. From Kentucky is recognized.
Reserve.
The Kentucky reserves. Gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to yield 1 minute to the gentlewoman from Minnesota, Congresswoman Omar.
The gentlewoman from Minnesota is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today with a heavy heart in support of HRES 519. What happened in my state of Minnesota was a painful reminder of the growing threats public servants face simply for doing their job. Speaker Melissa Hortman was a friend, a mentor, and a fierce advocate who dedicated her life to public service. The assassination of Melissa and her husband Mark and the harm done to Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette is a tragedy that should shake all of us, regardless of party. This resolution calls on us, on both sides of the aisle, to take that violence seriously. Recently, we have seen acts of political violence minimized, joked about, and used as a talking point. This has to stop. This job is never supposed to come with a target on our backs. Political violence has no place in our democracy. And if we truly believe in the work that we are doing here, then we have to protect the people who serve. I urge my colleagues to support this resolution, and I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields back. The gentleman from California reserves. The gentleman from Kentucky reserves, and the gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 3 minutes to the gentlewoman from Illinois, Congresswoman Ramirez.
The gentlewoman from Illinois is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of House Resolution 519, introduced by Congresswoman Kelly Morrison and the Minnesota delegation. I join my colleagues in condemning the attack that took the lives of Speaker Emerita Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark and wounded Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette. Let me say this loud and clear, as so many have said today. There is no place in our democracy for political violence. It violates our shared humanity. The violence we saw in Minnesota is a consequence of those in power irresponsibly stoking division and fomenting hate against political opponents. So I also rise today to amplify the resolution's call that we all reaffirm our commitment to a democracy where violent rhetoric and acts like this are not tolerated. Their call is echoed in my resolution to honor the life of Wadea Fayumi, a 6-year-old boy from Illinois whose life was taken in an act of anti-Palestinian violence. It is the duty of elected officials and the media to tell the truth without dehumanizing rhetoric when informing the public of factual information. We know that dehumanizing rhetoric can fuel sentiments of hate that result in violence. And each tragedy adds to a litany of evidence that our safety and that our security are interconnected. Dehumanizing rhetoric makes us all less safe. Whereas be a Truth Social post on Twitter or anywhere else, we all have a responsibility to denounce political violence in all its forms. And it is our duty to denounce and will continue to reject all forms of hate-fueled violence, from Plainfield, Illinois, to Gaza, to Israel, to DC, to Boulder, to Minneapolis, and everywhere in between. It is our responsibility, and I want to thank the sponsors for bringing this resolution. With that, I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields back. The gentleman from California reserves. The gentleman from Kentucky is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I have no further speakers and am prepared to close.
The gentleman from Kentucky reserves. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We can all agree that political violence should be condemned whenever it happens. Public servants must be able to do their jobs and represent their constituents without fear. It's good to hear this bipartisan support today. Of course, our prayers and our thoughts are with everyone impacted. And I urge the adoption of the resolution, and I yield back the balance of the time.
Gentleman from California yields back. The gentleman from Kentucky is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I join my House colleagues in offering my deepest condolences to the people of Minnesota. I particularly want to extend my sympathies to my House colleagues representing the Minnesota delegation. We mourn the loss of Melissa and Mark Hortman, remembering their lives and the lasting impact they had on the state they love so deeply. We send warm wishes of recovery to John and Yvette Hoffman, who have displayed true courage through this nightmare. My prayers are with the families and friends of the victims who have had their lives upended and forever altered by these heinous acts. We will not bend to intimidation or fear, and we refuse to tolerate the actions of those who would seek to usurp the will of the people and their representatives, advancing their own twisted agendas through violence and bloodshed. I encourage each of my colleagues to support this resolution, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Kentucky yields back. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and agree to the House Resolution 519 as amended? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the resolution is agreed to, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose, gentlemen from California seek recognition?
We get a recorded vote, please.
Is a gentleman requesting the yeas and nays?
Yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. All those in favor of taking the vote by yeas and nays will rise and remain standing until counted. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. Okay. The chair will now entertain requests for 1-minute speeches. For what purpose do gentlemen from Tennessee seek recognition?
Okay.
For what purpose does the gentleman?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Purpose, gentleman from Tennessee seek recognition?
Revise and extend my remark.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to honor a very good friend of mine, and he really is just a dadgum good East Tennessean, Mr. Willis Roscoe Bowman, on his 90th birthday. He's a lifelong resident of Bristol, Tennessee, and a lifelong entrepreneur. If I had to guess, I think his proudest accomplishment is his family. Mr. Bowman is married to his loving wife and an outstanding father. He's a grandfather to 9 grandchildren, and I know they keep him very busy. He began his career after purchasing a small gas station, going on to own 9 different domestic and foreign car dealerships across East Tennessee. At the age of 90, he still continues to go into the office 3 to 4 times a week, Mr. Speaker. And I think Congress could learn a lot from his work ethic and dedication to his community. Roscoe is also a NASCAR fanatic and never missed a race at Bristol Motor Speedway from 1961 until 2019. He even earned the coveted position of dropping the starting flag at a race. Over the years, he has become a collector of classic cars, restoring many of them himself. Friends, family, employees, and customers of Roscoe's will always tell you that he is one of the best men in all of East Tennessee, and I agree with that. He is most well known for giving you his word and coming through every time, Mr. Speaker. This is yet just another example of how members of Congress could learn a little of something from Roscoe. Mr. Bowman, from up here in Washington, D.C., I'd like to wish and thank you for your friendship and wish you the happiest 90th birthday, and like to thank you for your time and your commitment to the people of East Tennessee. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the
Gentleman yields back. For purpose, the gentleman from Tennessee seek recognition.
To address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend, and invite the members, a few members of the Tennessee delegation that are here with me.
The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Tim. With you first. Thank you. No problem. Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the opportunity to appear here. In Memphis, one of our great leaders, and one of our great leaders in the state of Tennessee, in the United States of America, and the world, in fact, was Frederick W. Smith, Jr. Fred Smith died this past weekend. Sudden death. He was 80 years old. Fred Smith started a business called FedEx, the largest air cargo system in the world, and he started it with an idea that he came up with it when he attended Yale University and made it a paper. Paper didn't get a very good grade, but the people of the world judged it as A+. And everything about Fred Smith was A+. He was just a regular, decent human being and a good guy. He was always available. He never made you think he was a big titan of business or a leader in industry and in the world, but just somebody who was interested in what you had to talk to him about, and he'd offer his advice. In Memphis, he had his hand in just about everything. Our basketball arena that's made the city the home of an NBA team is FedEx Forum. That's because of Fred Smith. Our college football team plays in Liberty Stadium. He's pledged $50 million to improve that stadium and bring it up to higher standards. We've got a golf tournament that's the FedEx St. Jude Golf Classic. He's got his hand in every good thing in Memphis, from education, zoos, the Civil Rights Museum. It's a big loss to Memphis. It's a big loss to Tennessee, and it's a big loss to America. I thank Mr. DeJarlais and Mr. Burchett for joining me up here, and I'd like to ask everyone to stand for a moment of silence in memory of Frederick W. Smith, Jr. A life well lived.
What purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
3 years ago today, the Supreme Court made the courageous and correct decision to strike down Roe v. Wade. But, Mr. Speaker, when over 1 million abortions are still happening every year in our country, we cannot grow apathetic to the ongoing suffering of unborn children. Our Constitution never was a pro-abortion document. It was always intended to guarantee equal protection for all people, no matter how young or how small. The good from the Dobbs decision is eclipsed by the rise in abortions nationwide following the decision, mostly due to chemical abortions through telehealth. Congress must act with urgency. My Teleabortion Prevention Act takes a step in the right direction by ending the practice of mail-order abortion that kills children and leaves mothers alone and helpless. We must take the principles woven into the fabric of our country and ensure they are reflected in our laws. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose, gentlewoman from Minnesota seek recognition?
Extend and revise my remarks.
The gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor the late former Minnesota House of Representatives Speaker Melissa Hortman. From the start of her career fighting housing discrimination as a volunteer lawyer to leading the Minnesota House as Speaker, Melissa truly exemplified what it means to live a life of public service. It was my honor to serve alongside her in the Minnesota legislature, where she showed me how to lead with passion and integrity. I was heartbroken to learn that my dear friend and her husband, Mark, were assassinated in an act of senseless political violence. There is absolutely no place in our communities for this kind of cruelty. We must settle our differences with civility and grace. We owe this promise to Melissa, Mark, and the Hoffmans, who also suffered at the hands of this violence, and our future generations. May Melissa's memory of unwavering dedication to all of Minnesota be remembered for years to come. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. For what purpose, the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
Today, I have a simple message for my colleagues in the U.S. Senate. Do not mess with our public lands. I helped to defeat a provision originally included in the House reconciliation bill that would have provided for public land sales. We got it removed. But now, a similar provision has somehow reemerged in the Senate. I want to be very clear. The inclusion of any such provision in the final version of the bill will imperil the entire reconciliation package. Our beautiful public lands are not just national treasures. They are deeply interwoven with our communities. They are essential to the character of our region. They provide jobs and economic activity. They provide recreation and joy, and they're open to all. And I will fight in every way I can to assure that they remain open to all, and that the will of our local communities is not subordinated to decisions made in Washington, D.C. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Georgia, for what purpose do you seek recognition?
To address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to congratulate Augusta radio host Austin Rhodes on the recent announcement that he will be inducted into the Georgia Radio Hall of Fame. For over 30 years, Austin has been a consistent and dependable voice as the host of the Austin Rhodes Show on WGAC, making it one of Georgia's longest-running weekday drive-time talk shows. Nearly 3 years ago, I stood before this body to recognize Austin's 30th year anniversary in broadcasting, and it is my honor to stand here once again to mark yet another achievement in his long career. During my time in Congress, I've had the pleasure of joining Austin's show on many occasions to discuss key issues impacting our nation and the CSRA. I will always appreciate Austin's flexibility, willingness to have important conversations, and most of all, his ability to tell it like he sees it. Austin, congratulations on this well-deserved honor. I have no doubt that you will continue to be our afternoon voice on the airways for many years to come, and I yield back.
Yields back. For what purpose, gentlewoman from Nevada seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized.
All right. So kind of stuck, I guess. Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to send a message to Senator Lee and his allies. We are not going to let you use our treasured public lands as revenue raisers to pay for tax cuts for billionaires. Now, we made it clear here in the House that selling off our public lands faced bipartisan opposition. With the House version of the bill, I was pleased and proud to lead the effort to strike the provision to sell off public lands in my congressional district in southern Nevada without our consent. Now Senator Lee is trying to introduce a similar provision in the Senate version of the bill. Now Nevadans see this for what it is, and there's public outrage from outdoor enthusiasts and conservationists. I'm pleased that the Senate parliamentarian with the Byrd rule has correctly ruled that this reckless provision has no business in a reconciliation bill. These are our public lands. Look at this map and you can see what's at stake. Now, it's not in the bill right now, but the fight is far from over. And so we will continue to do that, and this is the reason why, for future generations. I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. For what purpose, gentlewoman from North Dakota seek recognition?
I seek recognition to address the House for 1 minute and to revise the amendment.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to highlight 10 provisions in the House-passed One Big Beautiful Bill, 10 common-sense reforms that too often get overlooked. 1, the bill modernizes our air traffic control system. 2, it reforms student loan to reduce students' loan debt and debt burdens. 3, it helps farmers by increasing reference prices and strengthening crop insurance. 4, it ensures EV drivers pay their fair share for the roads because everyone who uses roads should help pay for them. 5, it reopens federal lands for energy and mineral development, restoring American energy leadership. 6, it unlocks spectrum for auction so we can roll out faster 5G. 7, it restocks our military, delivering peace through strength. 8, it invests $10 billion in border security or more. 9, it eliminates the $200 federal tax on suppressors. And 10, last but not least, it ends federal subsidies for wind and solar. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. Wait till he gets to this mic. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3rd, 2025, the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Smith, is recognized for 60 minutes as a designee of the Majority Leader. The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, 30 years ago today, the infamous holdings in Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey were reversed by the Dobbs decision, brilliantly written by Justice Samuel Alito, who hails from my state and from my home county, joined by the majority of the U.S. Supreme Court, and they said this: the Constitution does not confer a right to abortion, and they went on to return to the people and their elected representatives the authority to regulate or prohibit abortion, close quote. A new national debate on abortion began 3 years ago, And while there will be setbacks along the way, every human rights struggle has them. I believe that growing numbers of Americans are finally recognizing the cheap sophistry, the mega deception, and the culture of denial that devalues and disrespects unborn baby girls and unborn baby boys and trivializes the harm suffered by women. The comprehensive 2025 nationwide Marist poll found that Americans are against taxpayer funding of abortion, both at home and overseas in our foreign aid, strongly supports pregnancy care centers, very strongly supports them, and wants significant restrictions on abortion. A large number of elected representatives have passed pro-life laws to protect unborn children, including the state of Texas, and when a heartbeat can be detected at around 6 weeks in states like Florida, Georgia, Iowa, South Carolina, or when the child suffers excruciating physical pain, as we know they do from the abortion procedure, particularly as the child is being dismembered. That's a procedure used to kill these children at about 12 to 15 weeks. To date, 24 states have enacted pro-life laws to protect unborn children and women from the violence of abortion. Meanwhile, I'm happy to say there are more than 2,700 pregnancy care centers throughout the United States, each and every one of them an oasis of love, compassion, empathy, respect, and care for both mothers and their precious children. Abortion extremists in several states, on the other hand, including in my own state of New Jersey, have enacted anti-child laws that legally authorize killing unborn babies right up until the moment of birth, and also forcing taxpayers to subsidize the violent deed. Twice the Democratic House-led House of Representatives passed extremist legislation that would have explicitly sanctioned abortion throughout all 9 months of pregnancy, again, right up until the moment of birth, and would have nullified even modest restrictions enacted over the past half-century, including informed consent, waiting periods, and parental notification statutes. Let me just point out to my colleagues, the so-called abortion pill, mifepristone, is baby poison. It kills the unborn infant by starving the innocent child to death. I do a lot of work on the Foreign Affairs Committee over the years on food security. I've written 2 bills that passed the House called the Global Food Security Act. I'm all about, as we all are, mitigating hunger in our hometowns and across the world. What does mifepristone do? It starves the baby to death. The little child can't get the nutrients he or she needs to survive. This statement by Dr. Francis makes it clear it leads to starvation and eventual death to the fetal human being. We also know now, however, that mifepristone is extremely dangerous to women as well. And this is especially important because this dangerous drug is used to procure abortion 60% of the time, 6 out of 10 abortions in the United States. On April 28, 2015, the Ethics and Public Policy Center released a report entitled, "The Abortion Pill Harms Women. Insurance data reveals 1 in 10 patients experience a serious adverse event." The key findings were that women who take this drug experience sepsis, infection, hemorrhaging, and other serious adverse events within about 45 days of taking it. It was the largest study ever, known study of the abortion pill, 28 times as many abortions as were included in all FDA to date clinical trials combined. So this is the mega study, and it found what was not found earlier, because in many cases, those trials were sham trials. Let me also point out that it needs to be revisited. We call on the FDA to look at what has been done to women because of this terrible, terrible abortion drug. Let me just conclude before yielding to my very distinguished colleagues. I believe that future generations of America will someday look back on us and wonder how and why a society that bragged about its commitment to human rights could have legally sanctioned and aggressively promoted abortion by child starvation or by dismemberment beheading, chemical poisoning, and forced expulsion from the womb. I call on my colleagues to defend life, and I also would point out in an information age, they will wonder, as I do now, how was it that so many were deceived into believing that somehow abortion is safe? It's never safe for the baby, and it's certainly not safe for the mother as well. The injustice of abortion violence need not be forever, and we stand united in trying to protect those innocent human beings. We are joined now by our very distinguished Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, and I yield whatever time he seeks to use.
I thank you, my friend, for your many years in this arena, defending the sanctity of every human life. And I rise this afternoon to mark this historic life-saving anniversary. 3 years ago today, the Supreme Court corrected an egregious and tragic error and affirmed an undeniable truth that was originally affirmed in our nation's birth.
St. Mary's Area School District for launching a new agriculture education curriculum, an investment in both their students and the future of our nation's food system. Agriculture education is not just for those in rural areas, it's foundational to the future of our economy, our environment, and our national security. Programs like this one help students understand where their food comes from, how it's produced, and the science and technology driving modern agriculture. Beginning next school year, St. Mary's will offer ag curriculum starting in 7th grade and extending through high school. Already nearly 100 students have signed up, proof that our young people are eager to learn more about the science, innovation, and business behind agriculture. As chairman of the House Agriculture Committee, I applaud this effort. It's exactly the kind of hands-on, forward-thinking program we need to develop in the next generation of farmers, scientists, and entrepreneurs. Agriculture puts food on our tables, clothes on our back, and fuel in our vehicles, and programs like this ensure it continues to do so for generations to come. Mr. Speaker, I commend the leadership, educators, and students of St. Mary's for their vision, and I look forward to seeing the impact of this outstanding program. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Missouri rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on H.R. 3944, and that I may include tabular material on the same.
Without objection, pursuant to House Resolution 530 and Rule 18, the Chair declares the House of the Committee of the Whole on the State of the Union for consideration of H.R. 3944. The Chair appoints the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Loudermilk, to preside over the Committee of the Whole.
Thanks, sir. That's a lot there. Okay.
The House is in the Committee of the Whole on the State of the Union for the consideration of H.R. 3944, which the clerk will report by title.
A bill making appropriations for military construction, the Department of Veterans Affairs, and related agencies for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2026, and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the bill is considered read the first time. General debate shall be confined to the bill and shall not exceed 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member on the Committee of Appropriations or their respective designees. The gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Alford, and the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Wasserman Schultz, each will control 30 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Missouri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
I am honored to present the fiscal year 26 Military Construction, Veterans Affairs, and Related Agencies Appropriations bills to the House today. This bill supports our troops, it supports their families, and it supports our nation's veterans. The bill includes nearly $18 billion for military construction efforts. It is critical that our service members and their families have the infrastructure and support they need. This bill delivers to construct and improve military housing, child care centers, and other quality of life components that are so important to those who risk so much. This bill continues to build on investments that strengthens our national security through the construction of modern infrastructure and improvements to critical quality of life facilities for our service members and their families. Additionally, we continue to provide significant funding to build upon prior years' work to enable the Department of Defense to meet the challenges in the Indo-Pacific. The bill honors our commitment to our nation's veterans and to our troops. To honor that commitment, the bill provides full funding for health care and benefits for veterans. Our veterans have earned these benefits, and we are making good on our promises to them. That includes fully funding our commitment to the PACT Act. The bill continues robust investments in our women's health, rural health, veterans' homelessness issues, and mental health. The legislation maintains all the funding for medical and prosthetic research. It increases funding for VA infrastructure and supports Arlington National Cemetery. It invests in the improvement, operations, and maintenance of burial grounds for those who have sacrificed. I'd like to thank Ranking Member Wasserman Schultz. I am glad we are at this step in the process and hope that we continue to work together to support our troops and our veterans. Everyone, Mr. Chair, should understand that this bill cares for our veterans, it supports our troops and their families, and keeps the promises that we have made to our heroes. Mr. Chair, I urge my colleagues to support H.R. 3944, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Missouri reserves. The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman's recognized.
Thank you. And I unfortunately could not possibly disagree with my friend, Mr. Alford from Missouri, more on the description of this bill, which is why I rise in strong opposition to H.R. 3944, the fiscal year 2026 Military Construction, Veterans Affairs, and Related Agencies bill. While I unfortunately cannot support the bill on the floor today, I will say in Chairman Carter's absence that I am thankful and appreciative of the work that we've been able to accomplish together over the years on this subcommittee. I know he and I both prioritize quality of life for our service members and their families and caring for our veterans. Unfortunately, this bill hurdles us towards VA privatization, a top Project 2025 priority that undercuts what veterans consistently ask us for here in Congress. They want high-quality medical care at VA, not privatized care that takes longer to receive. By transferring record funding from VA medical services to community care, which is a 67% increase of $14 billion, this bill pushes veterans into private care, even though veteran polls and studies show that when given the option, veterans prefer to receive their medical care at the VA. In 2024, veteran trust in VA healthcare rose to a record 92%, and we should build on this success, not kick veterans to an already crowded private market. Now, I understand that there is a need for community care, especially for veterans in rural areas, and specialty care when necessary, and when appointments at the VA are scarce. However, countless studies show that when veterans seek care at private hospitals and clinics, they wait longer to see providers, and they get worse care. They know VA medical professionals choose this work due to their mission to care for our veterans, and that's something the private sector simply cannot replicate. We should invest more in VA provider recruitment and retention incentives, increase benefits counselors and adjudicators, not ignore veterans' wishes and speed recklessly into privatization. On the military construction side, this bill underfunds military construction by $904 million compared to the President's budget request, and fails to fund some specific needs like installation resilience and NATO infrastructure commitments. As Russia continues to wage an illegal war in Ukraine and threaten Europe, we should be sending a clear sign that we stand with our NATO allies, allies who stood by us for decades. And we are talking about infrastructure for our troops that are over there, as well as our allies' troops. We all know that global warming temperatures are having a devastating impact on our military installations, including sea level rise, recurrent flooding, hurricanes, and extreme weather, as well as extreme heat and drought. Yet this bill includes zero dedicated funding to mitigate this extreme weather damage to our installations and force readiness. We've seen time and again what devastating extreme weather can do to installations. In 2018, Hurricane Michael mauled Tyndall Air Force Base in Florida, my home state, and cost the Air Force $4.9 billion to rebuild. And when Typhoon Marwar ran through Guam and devastated the island, this Congress provided almost $1.8 billion to begin recovering from the damage. Unfortunately, we know that future need from Typhoon Mawar will cost many billions more. Finally, this bill includes a plethora of harmful poison pill riders. It once again prohibits the VA from implementing its interim final rule to protect a woman's right to an abortion and counseling. The message sent on that is clear. Republicans want to further limit women's access to health care. Never mind if an abortion is in the best medical interest of the veteran between her and her doctor. Disturbingly, Republicans think you should only have access to abortion if you're dying. So this bill has the government making personal medical decisions for veterans, not their doctor or the veteran themselves. It's a cruel and ironic way to treat those who fight for our freedoms by taking them away. This bill also undermines VA's ability to keep at-risk veterans safe by preventing VA from reporting a beneficiary to the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. This rider prohibits VA from following federal law to keep guns out of the hands of people who federal law says should not have them because they are a danger to themselves or others. My subcommittee receives notifications every time there's a suicide on VA property. Over the last year, Mr. Chairman, we received suicide notices from Asheville, Los Angeles, McAllen, Minneapolis, Las Vegas, South Texas, Puget Sound, and many, many more. Every single veteran committed suicide with a firearm. Every single one. With all of these serious concerns, I cannot in good conscience support this bill. I urge my colleagues to oppose it, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman reserves. The gentleman from Missouri is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Today is the first of 12 essential steps that the House Appropriations Committee will take to restore strong, responsible governance under the golden age of the Trump administration. You know, just this past weekend, Missouri's own 509th Bomb Wing and the 131st Guard Wing at Whiteman Air Force Base in my district demonstrated the vital role that our B-2 long-range strike force plays in preserving national and international security. Drone warfare between Ukraine and Russia has shown just how vulnerable strategic assets can be. This bill emphasizes the importance of modernizing and hardening our infrastructure for the world's most advanced air wings, such as the B-21 Raider. Our greatest asset, though, is not our aircraft. And I think the ranking member would agree it is our people. This bill makes bold strides to improve the quality of life for our service members and their families. It expands child care options. It enhances access to tutoring for children of fallen and disabled veterans. And it supports the daily needs of the men and women who wear the uniform. Access to a VA facility is not a reality for some of our rural veterans. I hear this each and every day out in my district, 24 counties southeast of Kansas City. This bill, though, ensures that they are not forgotten. We increased access opportunities by increasing the funds available for community care. And in a powerful act of bipartisanship, we are strengthening the Veterans Crisis Line. When a veteran calls, someone must answer. Increased staffing and resources will help ensure that support is there each and every time. Mr. Chair, our veterans fought for us. It is time that we fight for them. This bill does that, and I urge my colleagues to vote for this bill, a vote to support our veterans. And I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would certainly agree with the gentleman from Missouri if the Trump administration under Elon Musk's DOGE effort hadn't actually fired employees and interrupted the ability of employees of the Veteran Suicide Crisis Line from actually doing their job. And we have no idea how many people lost their lives as a result of that interruption in service. So I would love to agree with the gentleman, but unfortunately the facts on the ground actually reflect that they do not share the same commitment that we do to ensure the safety of our service members and making sure that we look out for them. And with that, I yield 5 minutes to the gentlewoman from Connecticut, the distinguished ranking member of the Appropriations Committee, Ms. DeLauro.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
I thank the ranking member for yielding. I want to thank all of the Military Construction and Veterans Affairs Subcommittee staff, both sides of the aisle, for their work, and in particular, Farouk Ofaso and Tyler Coe. I'm opposed to this bill, which will transfer billions of taxpayer dollars to private hospitals and clinics, leading to longer wait lines, poorer communication and coordination, a diminished quality of care for our veterans, and higher costs for taxpayers. This is the step toward privatization of the Veterans Administration, because if you hollow out the Veterans Administration, if you make it impossible for people to be able to access their benefits, then they say, well, we can't trust the VA. And then they'll move in the direction of privatization, and that is where this administration wants to go. This bill would worsen the quality of life for service members and their families while putting veterans' safety at risk. While our military faces massive recruitment challenges, the bill underfunds military construction by nearly $1 billion, hurting our recruitment and retention, undermining our military readiness by making it harder to keep guns out of the hands of those legally barred from holding them. This bill endangers veterans' safety. The bill leaves military installations, service members, and their families vulnerable to climate change and worsening natural disasters by failing to include dedicated funding to strengthen our military installations against these threats, or to help them recover from past disasters. Defense leaders, including during President Trump's first term, have warned of the danger that climate change poses to our military, and the tens of billions of dollars in damage to military installations from recent severe weather reinforces their point. The former Secretary James Mattis, he warned that climate change threatened American interests and our defense assets around the world, and said climate change is, and I quote, a challenge that requires a broader whole-of-government response. This bill attacks women veterans, who are the fastest-growing group served by the Department of Veterans Affairs, with a policy rider that limits abortion access and prohibits abortion counseling. The women who volunteer to serve and defend our nation, to protect Americans' sacred rights and our freedoms, should not come home to find that their medical care and family planning decisions being made by anyone other than themselves, their families, and their doctors. These riders do nothing but put us on a path of partisan division. It will make it more difficult to come to an agreement on full-year bills that can actually become law. Ending fiscal year 2025 with an unprecedented full-year continuing resolution was a missed opportunity to invest in our veterans and in our service members. We should be working towards a bipartisan bill that can actually pass this year. And finally, the bill undercuts our commitments to our military partners. The Trump administration has already done a masterful job at alienating America on the world stage, turning our back on our closest allies. This bill goes even further. It underfunds NATO, the infrastructure, by almost $200 million. It undermines the infrastructure projects of our own troops in Europe that they're relying on. Our credibility as a national security partner has been trashed by this administration, and now it is not time to retreat from our alliances even further. The majority may suggest that they are supporting veterans' needs with this bill alone, but we all know that it does not contain all the programs the most vulnerable veterans depend on. Programs and services, food assistance, education, health research, which this administration has illegally frozen and dismantled, and which their budget decimates funding for, support veterans around the country. Losing that support means abandoning our responsibilities and our promises to our nation's veterans. While I am glad that the Democrats on the Appropriations Committee were successful in shaming our colleagues across the aisle into amending their original bill to include advanced funding for the PACT Act, this bill still fails too many veterans in too many ways. So I cannot support it, and I urge my colleagues to vote no. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Reserve the balance.
The gentlewoman from Florida reserves. The gentleman from Texas is now controlling the time for the majority and is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Oklahoma, the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, Mr. Cole.
The gentleman's recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I thank my good friend Judge Carter for yielding me time. I rise today in support of this important piece of legislation. Prioritizing veterans and troops says everything about our values and that's exactly what this first FY26 appropriations bill does. The Military Construction and Veterans Affairs Appropriations Act is a testament to caring for those who selflessly worn America's uniform, their families, and the defenders who follow their path of service. We meet this mission not only in words of gratitude, but in policies that support them. This legislation provides full funding for health care and benefits for our nation's veterans and implements an advance for the Toxic Exposure Fund. This marks enhanced investment under President Trump, which is also reflected in critical mental health initiatives and work to fight homelessness. It devotes funding to improve quality of life, including child care and housing resources for military families who help carry the weight of their loved one's service. And it reaffirms our commitment to peace through strength by providing for military base infrastructure and key deterrence efforts in the Indo-Pacific. It also honors our heroes, ensuring the preservation of national military cemeteries and memorials. With this legislation, our obligations to our armed forces, past and present, and our security are upheld. A vote yes is a vote to put our veterans, military families, base readiness, and America first. I thank Chairman Carter for his hard work on this measure, and I urge all my colleagues to join me in supporting it on final passage. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
I yield back.
The gentleman from Texas
I
reserves.
reserve.
Reserves. The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I yield 3.5 minutes to the gentleman from Georgia, the distinguished ranking member of the Agricultural and Rural Development Subcommittee, and my dear friend.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to express my continued and resolute opposition to the FY26 Military Construction, Veterans Affairs, and Related Agencies Appropriations Bill in its current form. I represent a district that is home to Robins Air Force Base, Fort Benning, and Marine Corps Logistics Base, Albany. These installations are more than just military sites. They are the backbone of communities where service members live, raise families, and eventually retire to continue serving in civilian life. Because of this, I have a deep and personal understanding of the needs of our service members, veterans, and their families. I can say unequivocally that this bill fails them. Our veterans deserve better. Our military families deserve better. Frankly, all of us deserve a bill that reflects our shared commitment to the men and women who wear and have worn the uniform. This national defense is not just about weapons and strategy. It's about people, and this bill, as currently written, does not prioritize the needs of our people. Instead, it's laced with ideological provisions drawn from Project 2025, prioritizing political ambition over the well-being of those who have dedicated their lives to serving this country. Let me be clear. Health care for veterans should not be an ideological battlefield. Yet this bill accelerates the shift to privatized care at a time when we should be investing in the VA system itself. Veterans overwhelmingly want to be treated in VA hospitals and clinics, facilities tailored to their unique needs and staffed by professionals who understand the physical, emotional, and psychological costs of service. Instead of fortifying these institutions, the bill undermines them. Community care is an important tool, but it must remain just that, a supplement, not a substitute. Veterans should only be referred to community care when the VA cannot meet their needs, not as part of a systematic effort to privatize the entire system. Occam's razor reminds us that the simplest explanation is often the correct one. And here, the simplest explanation for this unprecedented increase in outsourced care is a broader goal to dismantle the VA system itself, aligning with Project 2025's dangerous objective to privatize veterans' health care. The consequences of this cannot be overstated. Equally troubling is the underfunding of military construction, particularly housing and child care. These are not luxuries, they're necessities. A stable home, quality child care, these are foundational to military readiness. When we fail to provide for the families of our service members, we degrade morale, retention, and focus. We cannot expect excellence from our armed forces if we do not support the very people who make excellence possible. This bill does not build trust, it erodes it. And trust in our government and our institutions and our promises is what holds the fabric of this nation together. This legislation should be a reflection of our our values, should speak to our priorities. It should say to every service member, veteran, and military family, we see you, we value you, we will not let you down. But instead it cuts where we should invest, it deregulates where we need oversight, and perhaps most egregiously, it sows division where we desperately need unity. This is not a partisan issue, it's an American issue. And we must rise above ideology to meet this moment with courage and clarity. I urge every one of my colleagues, especially those who may view this bill as just another line item, to pause and consider the real impact these decisions have on the people we're sworn to serve. Let their needs, not political blueprints, be our North Star today. We must do better. Expired. With that, I yield back.
I reserve.
The gentlewoman from Florida reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from California, the chairman of the Defense Appropriations Subcommittee, Mr. Calvert.
The gentleman's recognized.
I thank the gentleman from Texas. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of the fiscal year 2026 Military Construction and Veterans Affairs Appropriation Bill. It is fitting that the Appropriations Bill to come to the House floor this year is one that fulfills our highest priorities, honoring our commitments to those who have served and are currently serving in the United States military. This bill delivers on our promises by fully funding veterans' health care programs and fully funding veterans' benefits and VA programs. This bill addresses critical infrastructure needs for our men and women in uniform. To address deficiencies in the military barracks identified by GAO and others, the bill includes a $75 million increase. There's also a $75 million increase for child development centers on military bases to improve the quality of life of many military families. In closing, I want to thank my colleague, Judge Carter, for crafting a bill that keeps our promises to the veterans and to our troops. I urge all my colleagues to support this important bill, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Texas.
And I reserve.
The gentleman from Texas reserves. The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I yield 2 minutes to the gentlewoman from Texas, a new member of the Appropriations Committee, Ms. Escobar.
The gentlewoman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to first express my gratitude. I'm excited to be on the Appropriations Committee and to serve with wonderful colleagues on both sides of the aisle. Mr. Chairman, I've been so alarmed by the attacks on hardworking Americans by the Trump administration. And we are seeing through the Republican reconciliation bill an historic transfer of wealth from the have-nots to the haves. And it's been equally alarming to see that our veterans have not been exempt from what we are all concerned about. In fact, if we look at the mass firings that occurred as directed by Elon Musk and his Doge effort, 1/3 of our federal workforce is made up of veterans. They've been at risk by those firings. We know also that there are additional firings that are coming. 80,000 VA employees are slated to be fired. And the cuts to health care in the reconciliation bill will impact veterans' families, which is why I was hoping we could mitigate much of that through this bill. And unfortunately, we have not, which is why I cannot support the bill. In fact, Project 2025, which we discussed at length last year, one of the tenets of it calls for privatizing the VA. This bill lays the foundation for that. And we know that our veterans demand, expect, and deserve the best, highest quality health care. And that's why we must do more through this bill and not privatize. There are other components of the bill that are equally alarming. I hope we can continue to work better on both sides of the aisle to improve the care for our veterans. This bill doesn't get us there. Thank you. I yield back.
I reserve.
The gentlewoman reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
I reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
To the gentleman from Indiana, a member of the Appropriations Committee, just joined us, and we're happy to have him, Mr. Mervan.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Ranking Member. As an elected official, one of the greatest honors of my career has been standing shoulder to shoulder with veterans of Northwest Indiana. I've worked tirelessly to ensure they receive the world-class care and benefits they have bravely earned in service to our nation. Indiana's 1st Congressional District is home to nearly 40,000 veterans. Every single day, I fight to ensure that the Department of Veteran Affairs fulfills its sacred promise to those who wore the uniform. That means making sure the VA has the staffing, resources, and funding necessary to deliver the high-quality care for the heroes they deserve. It is with deep regret and strong conviction that I oppose this proposal because it fails our veterans. It fails to meet the obligations we owe and those who answered the call of duty. In particular, I have heard the voices of veterans and their families in Northwest Indiana, voices filled with concern and fear. They are worried that the cuts to VA staffing will strip away access to critical care and essential services. We cannot and must not allow that to happen. Our nation made a promise. We must honor it with action and not empty words. I've also heard from veterans who have continued their mission of service by joining the federal workforce, only now to face uncertainty about their future. These patriots who once defended our freedoms now work to uphold the very institutions they once served in uniform. Nearly 30% of the federal workforce is made up of veterans. Cutting staff just doesn't jeopardize care, it threatens the job and the livelihoods and those who have already sacrificed so much for this country. I stand ready for the debate ahead. And let's be clear, these cuts are coming at exactly the wrong time. Instead of reducing services, we should be expanding them in the wake of the Honor the Pact Act. Veterans exposed to toxic substances deserve swift justice. Right now, the average time for processing a claim is 165 days. Over 2.3 million claims have been submitted, and more than 6,000 of those veterans are right in my district, in Indiana's 1st Congressional District. That number represents hope and progress. I have to ensure and uphold a duty of brave men and women who have served, and I yield back my time.
The gentlewoman reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
I reserve my time.
The gentleman from Texas reserves. The gentlewoman is now recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from California, the distinguished ranking member of the Veterans Affairs Committee and a champion of our nation's veterans, Mr. Takano.
The gentleman's recognized.
I thank the ranking member. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in opposition to H.R. 3944, the fiscal year 2026 Military Construction Veterans Affairs Appropriations Bill. And unfortunately, I must ask my colleagues to oppose this fundamentally flawed legislation as well. This is not a position I take lightly, and I lament that we've gotten to this point. As ranking member of the House Committee on Veterans Affairs, I have a sacred duty to care for our nation's veterans, regardless of their race, religion, creed, gender, sexual orientation, marital status, or politics. And to fulfill this solemn promise, I am committed to doing all we can to ensure that we have a well-functioning Department of Veterans Affairs. We must also ensure VA has adequate funding to do the job we ask it to do. As such, anytime veterans legislation is on the floor, I ask two main questions. One, does this bill improve access and delivery of care and benefits for veterans, their dependents, and their survivors? And two, does it provide appropriate resources to VA to get the job done? Unfortunately, despite its price tag, this bill fails on both accounts. At best, I could say that this bill is premature. VA has not yet seen fit to provide Congress with full and complete justification for its budget request. So, we have no clear idea how VA intends to spend the money we would be appropriating to the department. And at worst, I would say that the Republican majority has rushed forward with a bill that is completely divorced from our current reality, one in which VA Secretary Collins is planning to callously fire 80,000 VA employees without regard to the impact on delivery of health care and other services. My Republican colleagues have thoughtlessly rubber-stamped a budget proposal that accelerates privatization of veterans' health care, threatens progress on ending veteran homelessness, erodes access to disability benefits, guts VA IT modernization unless you happen to be one of the president's tech friends, and needlessly drags VA into MAGA Republicans' culture war. This bill contains numerous dangerous policy riders that hinder VA's ability to serve all veterans. Especially harmful are provisions that deny women veterans the full range of necessary medical care, including necessary reproductive health care, which includes abortion care and counseling. On top of that, this bill abandons the premise that all veterans deserve the same level of care they have earned by cruelly and heartlessly subjecting LGBTQ veterans to the bigotry that characterizes this administration. The unpatriotic attack against transgender service members continues in this bill as an unsparing attack against transgender veterans.
I yield the gentleman an additional 30 seconds.
The gentleman's recognized.
And if that wasn't bad enough, this bill continues the harmful Kennedy Amendment rider. This short-sighted, dangerous provision prevents VA from protecting beneficiaries and those around them from potential harm. Beneficiaries with debilitating mental illnesses such as schizophrenia, Alzheimer, dementia, and bipolar disorder. I urge my colleagues to vote against this appropriations bill, and I yield back.
I reserve.
The gentlewoman from Florida reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from North Carolina, Dr. Murphy.
The gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I rise in grateful support of H.R. 3942, the Military Construction, Veterans Affairs, and Related Agencies Appropriations Act for FY 2026. As the proud representative of over 76,000 veterans, as well as Camp Lejeune, Military Air Corps, Cherry Point, and New River, it's my honor to advocate for federal funding on their behalf. I proudly support FY 2026 appropriation to increase the VA's budget by 10% to ensure that our veteran service members and veterans receive the resources that they need and, more importantly, that they deserve. North Carolina is proud to be called home by hundreds of thousands of active duty members of our military and those retired from our armed services. I'm grateful the Veterans Second Amendment Protection Act was included in this package, as well as supporting language for the F-35 Sustainment Center and utilities upgrade for future F-35 squadrons. I wholeheartedly support this legislation. We live in a dangerous world now. We had an administration before that wanted to make things about social justice in our military. Military is about defending the rights and freedom of this country, and I am proud that this administration and this Congress is going to support the military in keeping us safe and free. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll yield back.
I reserve.
The gentleman from Texas reserves. The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Florida, my colleague and friend, Mr. Frost.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, the theme for congressional Republicans this Congress is putting corporations over people. And that's exactly what they're doing in this bill. Instead of focusing on supporting our veterans, they've added one of the most reckless giveaways to the gun lobby that we've ever seen. Gutting the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, the very system that keeps guns out of the hands of abusers, felons, and people who might be a danger to themselves and others. Republicans want to ensure that even if the VA determines that a veteran has a mental health condition to the point where they can't cash their own check, the check has to be given to a family member because they're going through a crisis. Congressional Republicans want that person to be able to go to a gun store and buy a weapon. Most veteran suicides involve firearms. This will deeply worsen the veteran suicide crisis. This does not protect veterans' rights. This protects the gun lobby profits over the lives of our veterans. If you vote for this, you are voting for veterans to die. Don't let them tell you this bill is about liberty and freedom, because there's no...
I yield the gentleman an additional 30 seconds.
Gentleman's recognized.
Don't let anyone tell you this bill is about liberty and freedom, because there is no liberty in a coffin and there is no freedom in a funeral. Veterans will die if this passes, and anyone who votes for it should be ashamed of themselves. I yield back.
The gentlewoman reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
I reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I have no additional speakers in general debate, so I'm prepared to close. Mr. Chairman, I want to further add some information, because the Veterans Crisis Line was referenced by the gentleman from Missouri. I want to make it very clear that the Secretary of the VA actually did a YouTube video specifically denying firing anyone from the Veterans Crisis Line, when in reality he fired 24 people who worked on the Veterans Crisis Line. If there was any improvement to the Veterans Crisis Line in this bill, it is thanks to my colleagues on the Appropriations Committee, Ms. Dean, who was successful in passing an amendment that added $5 million to funding for the Veterans Crisis Line, and for Ms. Underwood, who actually added an amendment that prohibits any further cuts from the Veterans Crisis Line. We're certainly appreciative of the bipartisan support of that, but I want to make it clear that we need to remain united in fighting cuts to the Veterans Crisis Line and ensure that veterans have everything they need and a safety net firmly in place. But with all the issues raised during this debate, Mr. Chairman, from the blatant push towards privatization of VA medical care to the underfunding of infrastructure and climate resiliency projects and the harmful poison pill riders, I just cannot, in good conscience, support this bill. It breaks my heart because we do have such a good working relationship across the aisle with Chairman Carter and myself, and look forward to working together to improve this bill. I know it's possible as we move forward, and I'm hopeful, but I urge my colleagues at this point to vote against it, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman yields. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'm ready to close.
Recognized.
Thank you for having me here, Mr. Chairman. And I want to acknowledge that and ask my colleagues that they support the fiscal year 2026 Military Construction, Veterans Affairs, and Related Agencies Probation Bill. This legislation provides critical funding for military bases, provides housing for our troops and their families, and make other investments aimed at improving the quality of life of our service members, and ensures that our national defense needs are met both at home and abroad. We also uphold our pledge to our veterans. This bill fully funds health care and benefits for those who have honorably served. I ask you, again, I ask my colleagues to support this bill. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields. All time for general debate has expired. Pursuant to the rule, the bill shall be considered for amendment under the 5-minute rule. An amendment in the nature of a substitute consisting of the text of Rules Committee Print 119-5 shall be considered as adopted, and the bill as amended shall be considered as an original bill for the purpose of further amendment under the 5-minute rule and shall be considered as read. No further amendment to the bill as amended shall be in order except those printed in House Report 119-167. Amendments in block and pro forma amendments described in Section 4 of House Resolution 530. Each further amendment printed in the House Report 119-167 shall be considered only in the order printed in the report and may be offered only by a member designated in the report. Shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and opponent, shall not be subject to amendment except provided by Section 4 of House Resolution 530, and shall not be subject to a demand for division of the question. It shall be in order at any time for the chair of the Committee on Appropriations or his designee to offer amendments in block consisting of further amendments printed in House Report 119-167, not earlier disposed of. Amendments in block offered pursuant to Section 3 of House Resolution 530 shall be considered as read and shall be debatable for 20 minutes, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Appropriations or their respective designees. Shall not be subject to amendment except as provided by Section 4 of House Resolution 530 and shall not be subject to a demand for division of the question. During consideration of the bill for amendment, the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Appropriations or their respective designees may offer up to 10 pro forma amendments, each at any point for the purpose of debate. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Chair, pursuant to House Resolution 530, I offer amendments in block as the designee of Chairman Cole.
The clerk will designate the amendments in block.
On block number 1, consisting of amendments numbered 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 16, 17, 18, 20, 22, 23, 24, 26, 27, 29, and 30, printed in House Report number 119-167, offered by Mr. Carter of Texas.
Pursuant to House Resolution 530, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Carter, and the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Wasserman Schultz, will each control 10 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in favor of this amendment. It includes bipartisan amendments that both sides have agreed to. I appreciate Ranking Member Wasserman Schultz working with us on this amendment, and I ask for your support and urge its adoption. And reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I rise in support of this amendment. This amendment contains non-controversial amendments that raise awareness on programs that we all care about. That includes the need to address a variety of medical care issues at the VA, the need to build more child care development centers, construct more state extended care facilities, expediting claims processing, and many others. I encourage my colleagues to support this amendment, and I yield back the balance of my time. And I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman from Florida reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
I reserve.
The gentleman from Texas reserves. The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from New Jersey, a fierce defender of our nation's veterans, Mr. Gottheimer.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Ms. Wasserman Schultz. I rise in support of the en bloc package, which includes 3 amendments I offered to the FY 2026 Military Construction, Veterans Affairs, and Related Agencies Appropriations Bill. My first amendment requires a resident advocate in every veterans home across the country. This advocate will be a direct line of contact for our veterans and their families, ensuring that they have someone who can immediately help with any concerns and respond without delay. In my home state of New Jersey, 190 veterans tragically lost their lives because of the COVID outbreak at the veterans home in Paramus, New Jersey, and Menlo Park. This tragedy was preventable and unacceptable. My amendment will help ensure catastrophes like that never happen again. My second amendment will help VA hospitals provide kosher meals options for Jewish veterans. Right now, many Jewish and patient veterans are only served frozen, prepackaged kosher meals that severely lack quality nutrition. We must ensure that no veteran has to choose between their religion and their health. Finally, my third amendment will encourage continued funding for the Staff Sergeant Parker Gordon Fox Suicide Prevention Grant Program, which has delivered millions in grants for mental health services to help prevent veteran suicide. Without additional funding, this critical program will expire later this year. We cannot and must not let that happen. After sacrificing so much, our great veterans should never struggle to get the care, recognition, and respect they have rightfully earned. That's why I strongly urge my colleagues to support the en bloc package. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
I reserve.
The gentlewoman reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Guam, my friend, Mr. Moylan.
The gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, sir. I rise today in strong support of my amendment urging Department of Veterans Affairs to develop a comprehensive plan to relocate the VA regional office from Manila to Guam. Guam is home of one of the highest per capita population of veterans in the United States. But our role doesn't stop there. We serve as a critical hub for veterans across the Western Pacific, from the Commonwealth of the Northern Marianas to the freely associated states. Yet, despite this regional responsibility, Guam still lacks a full-service VA regional office. Today, veterans throughout our region are forced to rely on remote services or travel thousands of miles to Honolulu, more than 3,800 miles away, just to meet with a veterans counselor or resolve a claim. That's not just inconvenient, it's unjust, and it's unacceptable. My amendment seeks to change that. It would direct the VA to develop a plan within 1 year for transitioning its regional office from Manila to Guam. This isn't about turning off the lights in the Philippines overnight. It's about creating a deliberate, responsible roadmap that ensures veterans in the Western Pacific and the Philippines continue to receive care while aligning the VA footprint with our evolving strategic reality. The men and women who sacrificed for our country did not do so with an expiration date of their service. Our commitment to them must be equally enduring. We have a duty to ensure they are not forgotten or left behind. Thank you. I yield back.
I reserve.
The gentleman from Texas reserves. The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I yield 1 minute to the gentlewoman from New Hampshire, a new member and a veteran of our armed forces, Ms. Goodlander.
The gentlewoman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Congressman Wasserman Schultz, for your leadership. I rise today on behalf of the 88,000 brave American heroes, veterans, who call the state of New Hampshire home. We owe a sacred obligation to the women and men who served our country in uniform. We've got to make sure that they receive the high-quality health care they have earned. Now, there are 48 states here in the continental United States, and my home state, New Hampshire, is the only one without a full-service VA hospital. My amendment before the House today would change that. It'll ensure the Trump administration follows through on its promise to expand services to support a full-service VA medical center in New Hampshire. It's past time that we right this wrong, fill this gap, and I urge my colleagues here in Congress to support my amendment, which will do just that. Thank you, and I yield back.
The gentlewoman reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to 2 minutes? 2 minutes to the lady from Colorado, Ms. Boebert.
The gentlewoman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today with deep respect and unwavering gratitude for the brave men and women who have worn the uniform of the United States of America. My support for the members of our military does not end with their service when their service is complete, and I will always take steps to ensure that our nation's veterans and their families receive the benefits that they were promised and are owed. My amendments included in this package today ensure our nation keeps its sacred promise to those who have served our great country. From providing additional funding for the construction of new state extended care facilities to increasing funds for medical and prosthetic research, and from reducing the backlog at the Board of Veterans Appeals to providing burial services and benefits for veterans in rural areas lacking a VA national cemetery. My amendments will directly improve the quality of life for veterans throughout Colorado and America. This bill makes good on President Trump's promises he made to our veterans. It mirrors his executive orders on no funds for DEI, radical transgender surgeries, while also supporting the president's efforts to combat veteran homelessness through investment in the new bridging rental assistance for veterans empowerment program. This bill protects the Second Amendment rights of veterans by preventing the VA from sending information to the Federal Bureau of Investigations about veterans without a judge's consent. It also prohibits the VA from processing medical care claims for illegal aliens. I urge my colleagues to vote in favor of the bipartisan en bloc and for this critical piece of legislation. Our veterans are the living embodiment of duty, honor, and sacrifice, and they've stood on the front lines for our freedom, and this bill is a great opportunity to now stand for them. I yield.
The gentleman from Texas reserves. The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
Reserve.
Mr. Chairman, I reserve.
The gentlewoman from Florida reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Texas yields. The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, at the moment, I also do not have any additional speakers, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman yields. The question is on the amendments en bloc offered by the gentleman from Texas. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chairs, the ayes have it. The en bloc amendments are agreed to. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, pursuant to House Resolution 530, I offer amendments in bloc. as a designee of Chairman Cole.
The clerk will designate the amendments in block.
On block number 2, consisting of amendments numbered 1, 14, 15, 19, 25, 28, and 32, printed in House Report number 119-167, offered by Mr. Carter of Texas.
Pursuant to House Resolution 530, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Carter, and the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Wasserman Schultz, will each control 10 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas.
Thank you, Speaker. I rise in favor of the amendment. It includes various priorities related to veterans' health, care, and benefits, and calls for improvements to our military bases. I urge its adoption, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized. The gentlewoman is recognized.
I reserve.
The gentlewoman reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Just a moment. Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, my good friend, Mr. Arrington.
The gentleman's recognized.
I thank my good friend from the great state of Texas, the judge, as we call him, back in the freest and greatest state in the Union. I have an amendment, Mr. Speaker, and it's one I think all of my colleagues will want to support. In the last week, the world witnessed the might of America's unparalleled air superiority and what a critical role our strategic bombers and men and women who pilot and maintain them do to keep our enemies like Iran in check. For nearly 40 years, the B-1 has been the tip of the spear of America's air superiority. The B-1 has served us well, but at a time when our adversaries like China are making historic investments in their own military, it's time we roll out America's next generation warfighter. That's why I rise in strong support of this amendment that would direct a little over $4 million to enhance gate security at military installations set to receive the B-21 Raider, including Dyess Air Force Base there in the key city of Abilene, Texas. The B-21 Raider represents the most capable and lethal bomber this world, this planet, has ever known and seen. And it is the future of our long-range strike capability, designed to evade modern air defenses and deliver both nuclear and conventional payloads across the globe. Dyess, the base there in Abilene, Texas, will soon become a key platform for deploying this cutting-edge aircraft, and we have a responsibility to ensure that this investment in national defense is protected accordingly. Let's be clear, this is not a theoretical threat. In 23 alone, U.S. officials reported over 100 incidents of Chinese nationals attempting to unlawfully access Department of Defense facilities. In May of this year, I'm running out of time.
Gentleman's time's expired.
Can I get? I'll yield him an additional minute.
The gentleman's recognized.
In May of this year, 2 foreign nationals here illegally under President Biden's open border crisis attempted to breach Marine Corps base there in Quantico in a box truck. So these aren't isolated incidents, Mr. Speaker. They're part of a disturbing trend that had put our installations, our defense technology, and most importantly, our service members at risk. This amendment's straightforward. It funds the necessary upgrades to the gate infrastructure at bases like Dyess to comply with the Department of Defense force protection standards, reinforcing access control, preventing unauthorized entry. It's common sense, like I said, straightforward, and it will help both our service members, our air arsenal, and our overall national security posture. I urge adoption of this amendment and yield the balance of my time, and I thank the judge.
I reserve.
The gentleman from Texas reserves. The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in opposition to this amendment. This en bloc contains 8 amendments that will make this bill worse than it already is. It includes a funding cut to the Veterans Benefits Administration, further exacerbating the backlogs in processing disability compensation claims, leading to long waits for veterans. The Republican Milcom VA bill already cuts the NATO Security and Investment Program by $188 million. This amendment would further cut it by another $4.1 million. It's shocking that my Republican colleagues would condone this, especially while they're offering amendments encouraging the speedier processing of claims and lamenting the delays in countless Republican speeches. And NATO infrastructure investment receives robust funding from our NATO partners, but there's an illegal Russian war going on, so it would seem that we need more investment in NATO infrastructure now more than ever, and yet this amendment would further cut into it. The amendment also seeks to continue the Republican push to privatize VA medical care. The bill already includes a 67% increase to medical community care, which is an increase without justification or rationale. We received no backup information from the administration whatsoever as to why they proposed this or it's necessary, because it isn't. It's a simple additional attempt to march the VA towards privatization and get away from what we know veterans want. The amendment promotes untested and dangerous medical treatment for our veterans. It makes a bad bill even worse. I encourage my colleagues to oppose this amendment, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
I move the adoption of this amendment in blanc and yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Texas yields. The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
Okay. Do you want me to have him? You're going to close on the en bloc? Yeah, we could also add him now. We'll do that then. Okay, fine. Mr. Chairman, this en bloc doesn't do a single thing to improve this bill. In fact, it makes it worse. It cuts the Veterans Benefits Administration. It discriminates against veterans and doubles down on privatization of VA medical care. I urge a no vote and yield back the balance of my time.
The question is on the amendments en bloc offered by the gentleman from Texas. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chairs, the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I demand a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Texas will be postponed. What purpose does the gentlewoman from Florida seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I rise as the designee of the gentlewoman from Connecticut, and I move to strike the last word.
The gentlewoman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield to the gentlewoman from Ohio, the distinguished ranking member of the Energy and Water Development Subcommittee and the Dean of Women of the House of Representatives, Ms. Kaptur.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you very, very much, Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz from the great state of Florida. You certainly have educated us about Florida, among other things, and you're a proud, proud ranking member on this bill. But this bill punishes our veterans, pushing out professionals from the Department of Veterans Affairs. It promotes premature retirements, and it paves the way for private equity takeovers, leaving care delayed, denied, and diminished. For this reason, at the appropriate time, I will offer a motion to recommit this bill back to committee. If the House rules permitted, I would have offered the motion with an important amendment to this bill. My amendment would mandate metrics requiring a report on veteran employee separations, deferred resignations, early retirements, and contractor-driven cuts, exposing employment erosion and salary shortfalls of those who have served our nation. Veterans deserve data, not desertion. I will vote no on the military construction bill also because the underlying bill underfunds our military construction accounts by nearly $1 billion. This hurts our military readiness at a time when our enemies like China choose to invest in themselves. I also can't support a bill that paves the road to VA privatization. Perish that thought. And while I have the time, it is long overdue for the Department of Veterans Affairs to approve the request from Northwest Ohio to expedite dual affiliation of the University of Toledo's Medical Center and the Ann Arbor VA Medical Center. Our VA community clinic in Toledo stands ready to support this effort, and over 83,000 veterans in the Northwest Quadrant of Ohio deserve the convenience of access to the state of Ohio's medical center and academic center at Toledo. In Toledo, level funding in this account will not allow us to grow and fully support the needs of all of our veterans. At the end of the debate, I will insert into the record the text of this amendment, and I urge my colleagues to join me in voting for the motion to recommit. I thank you, and I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, I yield to the gentleman from Puerto Rico, Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you. I rise today in strong support of Congresswoman Kagan's amendment number 79, which ensures sufficient VA medical care for veterans in the U.S. territories, Commonwealths, and freely associated states. This amendment is critical for places like Puerto Rico, where over 79,000 veterans reside on the island and have served our nation with honor and distinction. Yet far too often they face unequal access to the care they've earned, whether it's limited specialty services, understaffed facilities, or long wait times for off-island referrals. The same is true in Guam, the USVI, American Samoa, and the Northern Mariana Islands, as well as the freely associated states in the Pacific. Veterans in these communities, no matter where they live, should have access to quality medical care owed to them. This amendment sends a clear message. Our commitment to veterans does not stop at the mainland. It reinforces the principle that all who served deserve timely, high-quality care regardless of where they live. I thank the gentlewoman from Virginia for her leadership, and I urge my colleagues to support this amendment. Thank you. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, I thank the gentleman from Puerto Rico for his fierce advocacy of the veterans from Puerto Rico, and I yield back.
The gentlewoman. For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana rise?
I move to strike the last word and rise as the designee of Chairman Cole.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My amendment provides $55 million to build a new aviation maintenance hangar and operations building and renovate the existing hangar space at our Shelbyville, Indiana Army Aviation Support Facility. 900 Indiana Guardsmen assigned to the 38th Combat Aviation Brigade have supported 16 deployments since 2001, including to Iraq, Kuwait, and Bosnia. Our Shelbyville facility remains a crown jewel of Indiana and the Midwest Army Aviation. This proud combat aviation unit has one of the oldest Army aviation flight facilities in the National Guard. Built in '72, it currently supports 11 aircraft and more than 50 full-time personnel. Upgrading the facility will save over 500 man-hours and prevent more than $200,000 in annual damage to blades and equipment. The new facility supports rapid homeland response and will sustain recruitment and retention of Indiana's finest soldiers. This amendment serves to equip our next generation of Guardsmen to protect our homeland, both at home and abroad. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields. It's now in order to consider amendment number 8, printed in House Report 119-167. For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, rise to present amendment number 8.
Does the gentleman have an amendment at the desk?
Yes.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 8, printed in House Report number 119-167, offered by Mr. Correa of California.
Pursuant to House Resolution 530, the gentleman from California, Mr. Correa, and a member opposed each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in strong support of amendment number 8, directing the Department of Veteran Affairs to make recommendations on changes that are needed to its existing health care infrastructure so veterans can receive psychedelic-assisted therapies upon FDA approval. In December of 2024, the VA announced $1.5 million in funding for clinical research on MDMA-assisted therapy for veterans with PTSD and alcohol disorder as well. This is the first time the VA has funded research on psychedelic compounds since the 1960s. My fellow Psychedelic Advanced Therapies Caucus co-chair, General Jack Bergman, and I are encouraged by the promising results so far that we have seen in treating veterans with PTSD and other disorders. However, these therapies are different from traditional therapies in many ways. Psychedelic therapies involve long-hour sessions with multiple therapists, additional safety issues, and special training consideration for providers. We introduced this amendment because we need to be ready and be proactive to make sure that when the VA is ready to administer these therapies, they actually can. While MDMA-assisted therapy did not receive FDA approval last summer, approval of certain psychedelic therapies will likely come very soon. And we owe it to our veterans to make sure that they can access these therapies upon approval. Every day, we lose 20 veterans to suicide. One suicide is way too many. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment to make sure that our veterans have the best care they need as soon as possible. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield the remaining of my time to General Jack Bergman.
Gentleman reserves. For what purposes does the gentleman from Michigan seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I rise to claim the time in opposition, although I am not opposed to the amendment.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my dear friend and fellow PATH Caucus co-chair, Congressman Correa, for yielding the time today. Washington, D.C. has built its success on good partnerships, especially across the aisle, on issues that benefit all of our Americans, not just a few. I rise in strong support of this amendment, which directs the Veterans Administration to begin preparing for the rollout of breakthrough treatments for veterans battling PTSD, depression, and substance abuse disorders. President Trump's first administration took a bold and necessary step by granting breakthrough therapy status to MDMA and psilocybin, acknowledging their potential to transform mental health care. Last December, the VA followed suit, funding its first psychedelic-assisted therapy study in over 60 years. That was a critical milestone, but research alone is not enough. Without a plan to turn findings into frontline care, we risk failing the very people this research is meant to help, our veterans. We know the stakes. Too many service members come home bearing invisible wounds. While traditional treatments work for some, far too many are left cycling through ineffective medications, suffering in silence, or worse, giving up entirely. Emerging VA studies involving MDMA and psilocybin show remarkable potential, not just for improvement, but for truly lasting healing. They offer hope, but hope alone doesn't heal. Washington has a bad habit of funding studies without ever building the systems needed to implement the results. We cannot afford to repeat that cycle here. This amendment sends a clear message to the VA. Don't just study, prepare. Prepare to implement new therapies and new found ways to improve the lives of veterans now, not 5, not 10 years from now. That means identifying the clinical infrastructure needed to deliver these treatments, training and certifying providers, and launching pilot programs to bring these therapies from the lab into real-world care settings. Again, we can't wait 5 or 10 years while veterans continue to suffer. Every day we delay is a day someone loses hope or their life. If there's a treatment that works, we have a responsibility to be ready to deliver it. This isn't about politics. It's about promises kept. We owe our veterans more than research. We owe them results. We owe them implementation. And this amendment moves us one step closer to delivering. I urge all of my colleagues to support it, and I yield back.
The questions on the amendment offered by the gentleman from California. Those in favor say yea. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the yeas have it. The amendment is agreed to. The chair understands that amendment number 13 will not be offered. It is now in order to consider amendment number 21, printed in House Report 119-167. For what purpose does the gentleman from Ohio seek recognition?
Mr. Chair, I rise as a designee for the gentleman from Florida, and I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 21, printed in House Report number 119-167, offered by Mr. Joyce of Ohio.
Pursuant to House Resolution 530, the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Joyce, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Ohio.
Mr. Chair, the true sponsor of this amendment has just arrived, and I would defer to Congressman Mass to maintain his position.
The gentleman
Appreciate that. Representative Joyce. I'm here to speak on Mass Amendment number 84. Something that we've dealt with here in Congress before specifically relates to veterans' access to cannabis. And the story that I'd tell in advance of this is simply this. I woke up in Walter Reed, not too far from here, a number of years ago. And when I woke up in Walter Reed, I was missing 2 legs and a finger, and I had been out of consciousness for a week plus. And what I woke up to was being on a laundry list of medications. I had an epidural, I had oral morphines and oxys, I had antidepressants, anti-inflammatories, heavy sleep sedatives, I had a Dilaudid drip, and a number of other things that I can't even remember to this point, all at once. I'd never been on any of these things before in my life. And I immediately, as soon as I woke up, I started to wean myself off of these drugs because I was saying to myself, you know, I might be very uncomfortable, but I don't want to be dependent on sleep sedatives. I might be in a lot of pain, but let's start taking off this painkiller and this painkiller and this painkiller, and I'm not depressed, so take this antidepressant away. These narcotics were beyond painful to come off of. I was down to the lowest amount after about 6 months of the last narcotic. It was an oral morphine. And going from the lowest amount twice a day, 6 a.m., 6 p.m. to nothing. I spent the next several months miserable, you know, all the gamut of withdrawal symptoms, irritability to say the least, food going through me, up all night, you name it. And that was just after 6 months. The state that these narcotics in many cases leave our veterans in are, at the most extreme end of it, states of suicide. At other ends of it, just extreme states of dissatisfaction and lacking purpose in life. And in some cases, it does leave them in a better condition. But the point I'm making with this true story is that veterans need to have options outside of these narcotics. And in many states, there are legal cannabis medical programs. And they need to have the ability, when they're being seen by their primary care physician inside of the VA, to have discussions about whether cannabis is or is not right for them because they have access to it in their state. They need to be able to talk to their provider, their medical provider, about what they fill out on the paperwork, what is the right dosage amount, how that's going to interact with any other medications that they might be on, how it might affect their blood pressure or other things going on with them personally. And if we're not giving that option to have that conversation at the most serious level without worrying about some kind of reprisal for the doctor or otherwise, then we are doing our veterans a disservice in certainly at minimum all of these states where there are legal cannabis programs. I am not a doctor. I would not purport to know when this is a good treatment for somebody or when it is not, or the amounts that they should take. But I know that as long as it is available in these various states, their doctors need to have the opportunity to discuss that treatment with them. Because the fact of the matter is, while I have heard of many of my brothers and sisters in arms being in a state of suicide because of the narcotics they've been on, I've yet to hear about any of them attributing a state of suicide to the cannabis that they have had as a part of their life. And in that, again, I would ask for support on Mast Amendment number 84. I thank you for hearing me out, and I don't know if I'm supposed to yield back to you, Mr. Joyce, or how we did this. I reserve our time.
Is the time of the gentleman from Ohio, and he reserves. Does any member seek time in opposition? Seeing none, the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Joyce, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What else can you say after hearing from the true story of a true American hero, and why it is to be important for all people, Floridians, every veteran, to be able to access cannabis if in fact it's necessary and prescribed by a doctor, if it helps them treat whatever they've come home with. My father was a wounded, left for dead in World War II, and he came home. I know what it takes for these people in the hurt that they've gone through on behalf of our country, and they deserve every option available to bring them back to what they were before they left on our behalf. And with that, I close.
Does the gentleman yield?
Pardon?
Yeah. The gentleman yields.
Yes.
The questions on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Ohio on behalf of the gentleman from Florida. Those in favor say yea. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the yeas have it. The amendment is agreed to. The chair understands that amendment number 31 will not be offered. What purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the committee do now rise.
The questions on the motion that the committee rise. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Accordingly, the committee rises.
Mr. Chairman. Chair of the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union reports that committee is under consideration H.R. 3944 and has come to no resolution thereon. Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House in recess subject to the call of the Chair.
An investment in both our students and the future of our nation's food system. Agriculture education is not just for those in rural areas. It's foundational to the future of our economy, our environment, and our national security. Programs like this one help students understand where their food comes from, how it's produced, and the science and technology driving modern agriculture. Beginning next school year, St. Mary's will offer ag curriculum starting in 7th grade and extending through high school. Already nearly 100 students have signed up, proof that our young people are eager to learn more about the science, innovation, and business behind agriculture. As chairman of the House Agriculture Committee, I applaud this effort. It's exactly the kind of hands-on, forward-thinking program we need to develop in the next generation of farmers, scientists, and entrepreneurs. Agriculture puts food on our tables, clothes on our back, and fuel in our vehicles, and programs like this ensure it continues to do so for generations to come. Mr. Speaker, I commend the leadership, educators, and students of St. Mary's for their vision, and I look forward to seeing the impact of this outstanding program. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Missouri rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on H.R. 3944, and that I may include tabular material on the same.
Without objection, pursuant to House Resolution 530 and Rule 18, the Chair declares the House of the Committee of the Whole on the State of the Union for consideration of H.R. 3944. The Chair appoints the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Loudermilk, to preside over the Committee of the Whole. Thanks, sir.
Okay.
The House is in the Committee of the Whole on the State of the Union for the consideration of H.R. 3944, which the clerk will report by title.
A bill making appropriations for military construction, the Department of Veterans Affairs, and related agencies for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2026, and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the bill is considered read the first time. General debate shall be confined to the bill and shall not exceed 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member on the Committee of Appropriations or their respective designees. The gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Alford, and the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Wasserman Schultz, each will control 30 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Missouri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
I am honored to present the fiscal year 26 Military Construction, Veterans Affairs, and Related Agencies Appropriations bills to the House today. This bill supports our troops, it supports their families, and it supports our nation's veterans. The bill includes nearly $18 billion for military construction efforts. It is critical that our service members and their families have the infrastructure and support they need. This bill delivers to construct and improve military housing, child care centers, and other quality of life components that are so important to those who risk so much. This bill continues to build on investments that strengthens our national security through the construction of modern infrastructure and improvements to critical quality of life facilities for our service members and their families. Additionally, we continue to provide significant funding to build upon prior years' work to enable the Department of Defense to meet the challenges in the Indo-Pacific. The bill honors our commitment to our nation's veterans and to our troops. To honor that commitment, the bill provides full funding for health care and benefits for veterans. Our veterans have earned these benefits, and we are making good on our promises to them. That includes fully funding our commitment to the PACT Act. The bill continues robust investments in our women's health, rural health, veterans' homelessness issues, and mental health. The legislation maintains all the funding for medical and prosthetic research. It increases funding for VA infrastructure and supports Arlington National Cemetery. It invests in the improvement, operations, and maintenance of burial grounds for those who have sacrificed. I'd like to thank Ranking Member Wasserman Schultz. I am glad we are at this step in the process and hope that we continue to work together to support our troops and our veterans. Everyone, Mr. Chair, should understand that this bill cares for our veterans, it supports our troops and their families, and keeps the promises that we have made to our heroes. Mr. Chair, I urge my colleagues to support H.R. 3944, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Missouri reserves. The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. And I unfortunately could not possibly disagree with my friend, Mr. Alford from Missouri, more on the description of this bill, which is why I rise in strong opposition to H.R. 3944, the fiscal year 2026 Military Construction, Veterans Affairs, and Related Agencies bill. While I unfortunately cannot support the bill on the floor today, I will say, in Chairman Carter's absence, that I am thankful and appreciative of the work that we've been able to accomplish together over the years on this subcommittee, I know he and I both prioritize quality of life for our service members and their families and caring for our veterans. Unfortunately, this bill hurdles us towards VA privatization, a top Project 2025 priority that undercuts what veterans consistently ask us for here in Congress. They want high-quality medical care at VA, not privatized care that takes longer to receive. By transferring record funding from VA medical services to community care, which is a 67% increase of $14 billion, this bill pushes veterans into private care, even though veteran polls and studies show that when given the option, veterans prefer to receive their medical care at the VA. In 2024, veteran trust in VA healthcare rose to a record 92%, and we should build on this success, not kick veterans to an already crowded private market. Now, I understand that there is a need for community care, especially for veterans in rural areas, and specialty care when necessary, and when appointments at the VA are scarce. However, countless studies show that when veterans seek care at private hospitals and clinics, they wait longer to see providers, and they get worse care. They know VA medical professionals choose this work due to their mission to care for our veterans, and that's something the private sector simply cannot replicate. We should invest more in VA provider recruitment and retention incentives, increase benefits counselors and adjudicators, not ignore veterans' wishes and speed recklessly into privatization. On the military construction side, this bill underfunds military construction by $904 million compared to the President's budget request, and fails to fund some specific needs like installation resilience and NATO infrastructure commitments. As Russia continues to wage an illegal war in Ukraine and threaten Europe, we should be sending a clear sign that we stand with our NATO allies, allies who stood by us for decades. And we are talking about infrastructure for our troops that are over there, as well as our allies' troops. We all know that global warming temperatures are having a devastating impact on our military installations, including sea level rise, recurrent flooding, hurricanes, and extreme weather, as well as extreme heat and drought. Yet this bill includes zero dedicated funding to mitigate this extreme weather damage to our installations and force readiness. We've seen time and again what devastating extreme weather can do to installations. In 2018, Hurricane Michael mauled Tyndall Air Force Base in Florida, my home state, and cost the Air Force $4.9 billion to rebuild. And when Typhoon Marwar ran through Guam and devastated the island, this Congress provided almost $1.8 billion to begin recovering from the damage. Unfortunately, we know that future need from Typhoon Marwar will cost many billions more. Finally, this bill includes a plethora of harmful poison pill riders. It once again prohibits the VA from implementing its interim final rule to protect a woman's right to an abortion and counseling. The message sent on that is clear. Republicans want to further limit women's access to health care. Never mind if an abortion is in the best medical interest of the veteran between her and her doctor. Disturbingly, Republicans think you should only have access to abortion if you're dying. So this bill has the government making personal medical decisions for veterans, not their doctor or the veteran themselves. It's a cruel and ironic way to treat those who fight for our freedoms by taking them away. This bill also undermines VA's ability to keep at-risk veterans safe by preventing VA from reporting a beneficiary to the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. This rider prohibits VA from following federal law to keep guns out of the hands of people who federal law says should not have them because they are a danger to themselves or others. My subcommittee receives notifications every time there's a suicide on VA property. Over the last year, Mr. Chairman, we received suicide notices from Asheville, Los Angeles, McAllen, Minneapolis, Las Vegas, South Texas, Puget Sound, and many, many more. Every single veteran committed suicide with a firearm. Every single one. With all of these serious concerns, I cannot in good conscience support this bill. I urge my colleagues to oppose it, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman reserves. The gentleman from Missouri is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Today is the first of 12 essential steps that the House Appropriations Committee will take to restore strong, responsible governance under the golden age of the Trump administration. You know, just this past weekend, Missouri's own 509th Bomb Wing and the 131st Guard Wing at Whiteman Air Force Base in my district demonstrated the vital role that our B-2 long-range strike force plays in preserving national and international security. Drone warfare between Ukraine and Russia has shown just how vulnerable strategic assets can be. This bill emphasizes the importance of modernizing and hardening our infrastructure for the world's most advanced air wings, such as the B-21 Raider. Our greatest asset, though, is not our aircraft. And I think the ranking member would agree it is our people. This bill makes bold strides to improve the quality of life for our service members and their families. It expands child care options. It enhances access to tutoring for children of fallen and disabled veterans. And it supports the daily needs of the men and women who wear the uniform. Access to a VA facility is not a reality for some of our rural veterans. I hear this each and every day out in my district, 24 counties southeast of Kansas City. This bill, though, ensures that they are not forgotten. We increased access opportunities by increasing the funds available for community care. And in a powerful act of bipartisanship, we are strengthening the Veterans Crisis Line. When a veteran calls, someone must answer. Increased staffing and resources will help ensure that support is there each and every time. Mr. Chair, our veterans fought for us. It is time that we fight for them. This bill does that, and I urge my colleagues to vote for this bill, a vote to support our veterans. And I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would certainly agree with the gentleman from Missouri if the Trump administration under Elon Musk's Doge effort hadn't actually fired employees and interrupted the ability of employees of the Veterans Suicide Crisis Line from actually doing their job. And we have no idea how many people lost their lives as a result of that interruption in service. So I would love to agree with the gentleman, but unfortunately the facts on the ground actually reflect that they do not share the same commitment that we do to ensure the safety of our service members and making sure that we look out for them. And with that, I yield 5 minutes to the gentlewoman from Connecticut, the distinguished ranking member of the Appropriations Committee, Ms. DeLauro.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
I thank the ranking member for yielding. I want to thank all of the Military Construction and Veterans Affairs Subcommittee staff, both sides of the aisle, for their work, and in particular, Farouk Ofaso and Tyler Coe. I'm opposed to this bill, which will transfer billions of taxpayer dollars to private hospitals and clinics, leading to longer wait lines, poorer communication and coordination, a diminished quality of care for our veterans, and higher costs for taxpayers. This is the step toward privatization of the Veterans Administration, because if you hollow out the Veterans Administration, if you make it impossible for people to be able to access their benefits, then they say, well, we can't trust the VA. And then they'll move in the direction of privatization, and that is where this administration wants to go. This bill would worsen the quality of life for service members and their families while putting veterans' safety at risk. While our military faces massive recruitment challenges, the bill underfunds military construction by nearly $1 billion, hurting our recruitment and retention, undermining our military readiness by making it harder to keep guns out of the hands of those legally barred from holding them. This bill endangers veterans' safety. The bill leaves military installations, service members, and their families vulnerable to climate change and worsening natural disasters by failing to include dedicated funding to strengthen our military installations against these threats, or to help them recover from past disasters. Defense leaders, including during President Trump's first term, have warned of the danger that climate change poses to our military, and the tens of billions of dollars in damage to military installations from recent severe weather reinforces their point. Former Secretary James Mattis, he warned that climate change threatened American interests and our defense assets around the world, and said climate change is, and I quote, a challenge that requires a broader whole of government response. This bill attacks women veterans, who are the fastest growing group served by the Department of Veterans Affairs, with a policy rider that limits abortion access and prohibits abortion counseling. The women who volunteered to serve and defend our nation, to protect Americans' sacred rights and our freedoms, should not come home to find that their medical care and family planning decisions being made by anyone other than themselves, their families, and their doctors. These riders do nothing but put us on a path of partisan division. It will make it more difficult to come to an agreement on full-year bills that can actually become law. Ending fiscal year 2025 with an unprecedented full-year continuing resolution was a missed opportunity to invest in our veterans and in our service members. We should be working towards a bipartisan bill that can actually pass this year. And finally, the bill undercuts our commitments to our military partners. The Trump administration has already done a masterful job at alienating America on the world stage, turning our back on our closest allies. This bill goes even further. It underfunds NATO, the infrastructure, by almost $200 million. It undermines the infrastructure projects of our own troops in Europe that they're relying on. Our credibility as a national security partner has been trashed by this administration, and now it is not time to retreat from our alliances even further. The majority may suggest that they are supporting veterans' needs with this bill alone, but we all know that it does not contain all the programs the most vulnerable veterans depend on. Programs and services, food assistance, education, health research, which this administration has illegally frozen and dismantled, and which their budget decimates funding for, support veterans around the country. Losing that support means abandoning our responsibilities and our promises to our nation's veterans. While I am glad that the Democrats on the Appropriations Committee were successful in shaming our colleagues across the aisle into amending their original bill to include advanced funding for the PACT Act, this bill still fails too many veterans in too many ways. So I cannot support it, and I urge my colleagues to vote no. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Reserve the balance.
The gentlewoman from Florida reserves. The gentleman from Texas is now controlling the time for the majority and is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Oklahoma, the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, Mr. Cole.
The gentleman's recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I thank my good friend Judge Carter for yielding me time. I rise today in support of this important piece of legislation. Prioritizing veterans and troops says everything about our values, and that's exactly what this first FY26 appropriations bill does. The Military Construction and Veterans Affairs Appropriations Act is a testament to caring for those who selflessly worn America's uniform, their families, and the defenders who follow their path of service. We meet this mission not only in words of gratitude, but in policies that support them. This legislation provides full funding for health care and benefits for our nation's veterans and implements an advance for the Toxic Exposure Fund. This marks enhanced investment under President Trump, which is also reflected in critical mental health initiatives and work to fight homelessness. It devotes funding to improve quality of life, including child care and housing resources for military families who help carry the weight of their loved one's service. And it reaffirms our commitment to peace through strength by providing for military base infrastructure and key deterrence efforts in the Indo-Pacific. It also honors our heroes, ensuring the preservation of national military cemeteries and memorials. With this legislation, our obligations to our armed forces, past and present, and our security are upheld. A vote yes is a vote to put our veterans, military families, base readiness, and America first. I thank Chairman Carter for his hard work on this measure, and I urge all my colleagues to join me in supporting it on final passage. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
I yield back.
The gentleman from Texas reserves.
I reserve.
Reserves. The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I yield 3.5 minutes to the gentleman from Georgia, the distinguished ranking member of the Agricultural and Rural Development Subcommittee, and my dear friend.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to express my continued and resolute opposition to the FY26 Military Construction, Veterans Affairs, and Related Agencies Appropriations Bill